Sheer put down her glass, and looked into Mag's eyes as she said, I also think that many of the policies in the Chamber of Commerce are unreasonable, and are leading the Chamber of Commerce on a descent into a dark abyss. That's why I hope you can change the Chamber of Commerce together with me, Mr. Mag. I look forward to seeing your vision come to fruition, young Mistress Sheer. However, I won't fire Mia just so I can join the Chamber of Commerce. Mag shook his head in response as he continued, also, I don't think I would provide much assistance to you during the upcoming election by joining the Chamber of Commerce. With your cooking skills, it's only a matter of time before Mamie Restaurant reaches the top of the Aden Square food competition rankings. In the future, there will be no restaurant that can compare to Mamie Restaurant's influence in the Aden Square. When that time comes, you'll be an extremely influential figure in Chaos City's gastronomic industry. The gastronomic industry is an important constituent of the Chamber of Commerce, holding a lot of weight during the elections. Hence, it is of the utmost importance to the upcoming election. Sheer leaned forward slightly as she looked in Mag's eyes with a serious expression. Mag looked at Sheer with a smile, and said, I don't know much about the Chamber of Commerce, but I do know that President Jeffrey holds absolute control and authority over the Chamber of Commerce. If things continue like this, there's only a very slim chance that you'll secure victory in the upcoming election, right? In other words, you're doing all of this in preparation for the next election, am I correct? You really are a smart man, Mr. Mag. Sheer faltered slightly upon hearing this, but then a smile quickly appeared on her face. She leaned back in her chair in a leisurely manner, and nodded as she said, I'll try to win the upcoming election, but my chances are admittedly very slim, so I'm mostly setting things in motion in preparation for the next election. We're still young, yet Jeffrey is already old, isn't that right? Indeed. You're only 18, young Mistress Sheer. Even in 5 years, you'll only be 23, yet President Jeffrey may not be around for that many more 5-year stretches. Mag nodded as he looked at Sheer. In the business world, prodigies were not uncommon. In his past life, he had met many prodigies who had thrived on Wall Street even at just 17 or 18 years of age. However, it was very rare to see someone so young with so much patience, even to the extent that they were able to bide their time and set a foundation 5 years in advance. Compared to those impatient and impulsive prodigies, Sheer was more like a seasoned businesswoman. She was well aware of her strong points, and she knew how to maximize the effect of the advantages that she held. A woman like her was very terrifying. Would you be willing to wait those 5 years with me, Mr. Mag? When that time comes, Mamie Restaurant will become the #1 restaurant in the Aden Square, and all of those terrible policies will be abolished, Sheer offered with a smile. 5 years is too long, I strive only for the present. Mag shook his head as he looked at Sheer before lowering his voice slightly as he said, my cooking may not be able to influence the election much, but I have something interesting that could perhaps transform the Chamber of Commerce in a short time. Would you be interested in that, young Mistress Sheer? What are you referring to, Mr. Mag? Sheer was still leaning back in her chair as she asked back with a smile. Young Mistress Sheer, you're aware of the steam engine that Principal Heidel is developing, right? Mag asked with a smile. No way. Sheer sat bolt upright as she stared at Mag with a bewildered look. If I told you I possess the technology to construct a complete steam engine, would you believe me? Mag nodded in confirmation. Sheer continued to stare at Mag with a hint of disbelief in her eyes. However, she quickly composed herself, and nodded as she replied, I wouldn't believe you if you were anyone else, but I believe in you, Mr. Mag, because you're a smart person. You're also a smart person, young Mistress Sheer, so you should know how much of an impact the steam engine will make on this world. I actually don't know what impact it'll have, but I have a feeling that it will change the entire world as we know it. I just didn't think you would be the one to develop it first, Mr. Mag. Sheer looked at Mag with a slightly complex expression. She was the one who had made an executive decision to fund Heidel's research, and she would meet Heidel once every quarter to listen to him deliver a report on his research progress, as well as how he envisioned the steam engine was going to be used in this world. She didn't know anything about mechanics, but her acute business sense told her 3 years ago that this was something that could change the world. If something as common as coal could be converted into a controllable form of energy, then it was very difficult to imagine how drastic a revolution the world would undergo. The first person to master this technology would oversee this revolution, and countless opportunities would be thrown their way. This was why she was willing to invest large amounts of funds into Heidel's research, even though it had always been stagnant. However, Mag was telling her that he had already mastered this technology, which came as a massive shock to Scheer. Principal Heidel gave me a lot of inspiration, but I completed this steam engine prototype on my own. If I want to promote the steam engine, my best option would be to cooperate with either the City Lord's castle or the Buffett family. Mag nodded in response. Scheer's reaction told him that she already understood the importance of the steam engine, which saved him a lot of explaining. As such, he continued, I already have some ideas about the practical application of steam engines. If you have some time on your hands at some point, perhaps you can listen to my ideas. Tomorrow is fine for me. I want to see the steam engine that you've created, is that okay? Scheer immediately asked. That's fine. You can come to my restaurant tomorrow at the conclusion of the breakfast service, young Mistress Scheer. Mag was slightly taken aback by Scheer's eagerness, but he still nodded in response. I trust that this will be an interesting collaboration. Scheer raised her glass. My thoughts exactly. Mag gently clinked his glass with Scheer before taking a sip of red wine. Right at this moment, Vivian's voice suddenly sounded. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Vivian. If everyone could spare some of your time and attention, I would like to invite Teacher Luna of Chaos School onto the stage to share some stories with you all. Mag turned in the direction the voice had come from with a slightly surprised look. On a tall platform set up within the banquet hall, Vivian handed over what appeared to be a microphone to Luna before jumping off the stage. The banquet hall gradually fell silent as everyone turned their attention to Luna. A beam of light shone down on her, and her light green dress coupled with her delicate features made her appear very amiable and likable. Luna looked down at the pairs of eyes focused on her and hesitated momentarily. Her gaze then fell on Amy, and she suddenly thought of all of the pairs of bright and expectant eyes that looked up to her every day. She stepped forward, and said in a clear voice, I'm a teacher of Chaos School, and I'm also one of the normal people who give food to the homeless kids on the streets of Chaos City every day. Those kids call me Teacher Luna, just as my students at Chaos School do. Everyone listened in silence as Luna spoke about her vision to provide all of these homeless children a warm haven and an opportunity to attend school. The expressions on the faces of the guests didn't change much. Vivian was the City Lord's daughter, and everyone listened because she told them to, not because the stories Luna was telling were very touching to them. They were merely listening as a gesture of respect to Vivian, or more so the City Lord. Teacher Luna is such a good person. Amy looked up at Luna with tears shimmering in her large blue eyes. Geez, her eyes practically glow when she talks about things like this. Vivian looked at Luna with a smile on her face. She then swept her gaze through the wealthy businessmen present, and her brows furrowed slightly. These people didn't appear to be as enthusiastic as she had anticipated. Mag's eyes were also focused firmly on Luna. She was a young mistress who had left the comfort of her noble family in Rodu to come all the way here to Chaos City just so she could become a teacher. Furthermore, she had always been dedicated to helping homeless children, planting the seed of hope in their hearts. There were some people in this world who dedicated themselves to doing good deeds for no return, doing things that other people quite frankly thought to be stupid. These people were known as saints. Mag didn't feel anything toward these so-called saints in his past life, but after transmigrating to this world, he suddenly developed the feeling that these saints made the world they lived in a better place. Luna was perhaps not a complete saint from head to toe, but the acceptance and love radiating from her body were very touching to Mag. If it weren't for her, the 3 years that Amy and Alex had spent in Chaos City would surely have been even more arduous. It was her who had sowed the seed of kindness and hope in Amy despite her poverty. How could he not want to approach such a selfless and adorable person? Perhaps it's time I did something to repay her, Mag thought to himself. The restaurant was well and truly on track, and business at the ice cream was also booming. As such, it wasn't a difficult task for him to donate a substantial sum of money. Is there something going on between her and Mr. Mag? Shear's gaze switched between Mag and Luna as a curious look appeared on her face. I didn't think there were so many poor children in our Chaos City. Gloria looked at Luna with a sympathetic expression on her face. She really is a good girl, but being a good person is a very difficult and often thankless task. Camilla shook her head before turning her gaze away from Luna and back to Gloria. She petted the black cat in her arms, and gently asked, "Little Black, what should I do to swindle this beautiful woman into my hands?" "Mistress, I suggest you give up on that pursuit. Chaos City isn't going to just stand by and watch as the young mistress of the Moraton family gets abducted. Also, please call me Caesar." The black cat was trying to dodge Camilla's hand, but was unable to escape in the end. "Do you think I'd stoop to a lowly tactic like abduction?" A deriding sneer appeared on Camilla's face. She looked at Gloria and licked her lips as she said, "If I don't win her heart, how will I be able to unlock more positions?" Who was it that was constantly talking about throwing prey into rucksacks and abducting them? The black cat rolled its eyes. "Shush!" Camilla's hand balled up into a fist as she aimed a gentle punch at the cat's head. She looked at Gloria with a serious expression, and said, "This time, I'm going to use my charm to completely conquer this beauty." "Meow," the black cat whined in a pitiful manner. "This matter should be taken care of by the City Lord's castle, it's just that the City Lord's castle really doesn't have any more funds to spare." Who would have thought that Luna would be stepping up to speak out on the issue? "If Old Man Field hears about this, he's definitely going to write a letter to chastise me." Michael shook his head with an embarrassed look. Jeffrey stood beside him with his brows furrowed slightly, seemingly deep in thought about something. "What a load of nonsense." Cyril looked at Luna with a derisive sneer on his face. "I want to set up a foundation to raise funds for these children. These funds will go toward providing them with daily necessities to ensure their survival while also striving to create opportunities for them to receive education." Luna paused for a moment before looking down at the wealthy businesspeople below the stage with an earnest expression as she continued, "Ladies and gentlemen, would any of you be willing to contribute the first batch of funds to the foundation?" The entire banquet hall remained silent. All of the guests were unconsciously avoiding Luna's gaze, and no one was willing to step up. "These bastards!" Vivian clenched his fists with rage. She had expected that it would be difficult to get these stingy businesspeople to donate, but she didn't think that Luna's pleas would receive no support at all. These people possessed the vast majority of wealth in Chaos City, but they were also stingy. Luna's expectant gaze also slowly turned into one of disappointment. She had experienced rejection of this kind many times in the past. Requesting donations in the Aiden Square very rarely ended up being a successful endeavor, but she didn't want to give up on this opportunity to try and secure donations from so many businessmen. "Teacher Luna, I'm willing to donate all of my money to buy food for those children." Right at this moment, a tender voice sounded. Everyone turned round, only to discover a little half-elf girl with her little hand raised high in the air. She stepped forward with a serious expression and got up on the tips of her toes to give herself a bit more elevation. "It's that half-elf little girl. It's Mr. Mag's daughter," someone exclaimed. "Amy." Luna was slightly taken aback as she looked at Amy. The light was reignited in her eyes as she squatted down and extended her hand toward Amy. Amy strode forward and placed her hand over Luna's before unfurling her fingers. 2 shiny copper coins were revealed. "Teacher Luna, this is money I saved up myself, even Father doesn't know about this. I'm giving it all to you now so you can buy some delicious food for them," Amy said with a serious look on her little face. "Yes, I'll be sure to spend it wisely." Luna clenched the 2 copper coins tightly in her hand as she nodded firmly. Even though it was only 2 small copper coins, they were feeling particularly heavy in her hand. Go, Teacher Luna. You're the best. Amy clenched her little fist as she gave Luna a sweet smile. All of the guests were suddenly feeling quite embarrassed upon hearing this, and their expressions became rather hesitant. They're just a bunch of stupid kids with no future and no one to look after them. Even if we give them food to eat and clothes to wear, they'll only grow up to become low-class trash. Chaos City will only be better without them. Right at this moment, Cyril emerged from the crowd and looked at Luna with a disdainful sneer as he said, "So why should we donate our money to you?" A stir ran through the banquet hall following Cyril's loud declaration. The hint of guilt and embarrassment that had just welled up in their hearts were instantly swept away as haughty smiles appeared on their faces. Indeed, why should they donate their money to those lowly kids? They were the scum of Chaos City. Luna had packaged these kids through the use of sad and touching stories, but at the core of the matter, what did it matter to them whether these homeless kids died or not? Cyril listened to the words of praise being directed at him, and his smile widened even further. The social hierarchy was something insurmountable. In Chaos City, the businessmen in the banquet hall were from the highest echelon. They were standing here, while their children received the best education in Chaos School. After the latter graduated, some of them would become revered magic casters and knights, but most would inherit their family heirlooms, continuing to live lives of luxury as upper-class citizens. Cyril was a representative of the upper class. Ever since he could remember, he knew that he was destined to be different from normal people, and that he had an insurmountable advantage from birth. As for those lowly and inferior homeless children, why did they deserve to attend the same schools as the children from noble families? Why did they deserve a chance to escape from their lowly socio-economic status? If they all became knights and magic casters, who would continue to work as their servants? Without their lowliness, who would highlight the nobility of all of the guests gathered here? The homeless children that wandered the streets were indeed very annoying to see, but many people derived pleasure from seeing the envy and admiration in their eyes. Cyril knew that was what all of the businessmen present thought, as it was exactly what he himself thought. As such, he knew that he had said the right thing in the right place, thereby successfully drawing the limelight to himself and stealing the attention away from Gloria. This was the voice of the upper class. Michael stood up with a cold expression, and said, "If businessmen only think about earning money and never about reimbursing Chaos City, then why should the city support them?" Jeffrey opened his mouth to say something, but he swallowed his words in the end. However, his eyes were already filled with frosty disapproval as he looked at Cyril. How did this idiot ever end up becoming the heir to the Moreton family? In comparison, that young Mistress Gloria appears to far more intelligent. She could perhaps be a worthy adversary for me in the future. Sheer looked at Cyril with a derisive sneer before turning her attention to Gloria, upon which a sharp look appeared in her eyes as if she were a hunter surveying her prey. Luna looked at Cyril, then at the deriding sneers on everyone's faces, and a chilling sensation suddenly welled up in her heart. She had anticipated many scenarios, but she still couldn't help but shudder at the sight of the hideous interiors exposed as the businessmen present shed their polite and benevolent facades. In fact, she didn't even know how to respond to this situation. "You're lying, you baddie. They're not scum, they're my friends, and all of them are very smart." Amy spread open her hands as she stood in front of Luna, appraising Cyril with a serious expression. There were already 2 balls of flames hovering over her hands, one of which was a normal crimson fireball, while the other was a ball of icy flames. Your friends?" Cyril glared at Amy. This little brat was just as annoying as her father. A cold smile appeared on his face as he said, "So that means you were also once homeless? You also had to live off food scraps? Is that why you're an uncultured little brat who's showing off her pathetic little fireballs? Is that why your father is an idiot who only knows how to cook?" Some of the guests burst into laughter upon hearing that. Mag had displayed immense potential earlier, but there was still quite a large disparity between him and Cyril. As such, it wasn't a difficult choice for them to decide whom they were going to side with. Amy raised her head with a serious expression, and asked, "Are you mocking my father?" "So what if I am?" Cyril shrugged as his smile became even more pronounced. "Then, you can go die." Amy raised her hands, and the two balls of fire instantly expanded. Scorching heat and freezing chill descended in unison as the nearby guests retreated unconsciously. "Protect young Master Cyril." The guards at the banquet were stunned by this sudden escalation of events, and rushed over from all directions. Cyril had also been given a fright as he reflexively stumbled back a couple of steps. He looked at the shimmering flames and composed himself again as he chuckled coldly. "I'm standing right here, why don't you attack me?" As soon as his voice fell, a lotus flower constructed from fire and ice flames had already been sent flying toward him, and it appeared in front of him in the blink of an eye. Cyril's pupils dilated drastically upon seeing this. He was faced with a dazzling lotus flower that was stunningly beautiful, but the power imbued within it struck him with a sense of despair. The guards in the banquet hall weren't far away, but there was no way they'd be able to stop the lotus flower in time. Camilla had the power to save him, but she merely stood off to the side with a smile on her face. City Lord Michael also remained standing on the spot without any intention to intervene. Expressions of shock and panic appeared on the faces of all of the guests. A massive space had opened up behind the Chamber of Commerce. No one dared to imagine that something like this would happen on the mid-year banquet held by the Chamber of Commerce. If Cyril were to die here tonight, what would be the aftermath? The same thought flashed through the minds of countless people, yet none of them could provide an answer. Right at this moment, a shiny leather shoe stomped heavily onto Cyril's backside, causing him to fly through the air like a cannonball. His face slid along the smooth floor for several meters before he came to a stop. The oncoming lotus flower abruptly slowed down slightly before exploding behind him. His lavish red and green robes were reduced to shredded rags, revealing a charred black backside amid a howl of pain and humiliation. "Young Master Cyril, there are some things that you can't say to children. My little Amy is such a good little girl, of course she wouldn't refuse if you asked her to attack you. You're going to spoil her like this." Mag withdrew his outstretched foot before covering Amy's eyes so she wouldn't be able to see Cyril's unsightly backside. He then turned to the enraged and humiliated Cyril as he shook his head, and said, "A person's value and worth shouldn't be judged according to their socio-economic status. In my opinion, trash like you is far more worthless than any homeless child on the streets. I'll be donating 10% of my ice cream shop's earnings to Teacher Luna's foundation. She is truly doing God's work and deserves our support." Right at this moment, Gloria stepped forward and looked at Mag as she announced loudly, "I'll also donate 10% of Blue Suede's earnings to Teacher Luna's foundation. The money will go toward making sure every homeless child has enough clothes to wear." Mag turned to Gloria, and a smile appeared on his face. He didn't think that the first person to stand with him would be Gloria. It appeared that she was braver than he had imagined. Aside from Cyril's pitifully low IQ and EQ, the deeply ingrained preconceived notions about social hierarchies were the true source of his confidence. However, Mag still couldn't understand why Jeffrey insisted on trying to groom such a retard into the successor of the Moreton family. Did he want his family to fall in the near future? It was indeed normal for children to inherit the heirloom of their fathers, but surely not just any child was deserving of their father's heirloom. Back in his past life, his father had been much wiser. He knew that Mag wasn't interested in, nor was he capable of, inheriting the family business, so he hired a professional manager to take care of the business. It was an easy and highly efficient decision, and it was certainly much better than forcing Mag to take over the business, and then inevitably run it into the ground. In comparison, even though Gloria had only recently kindled the urge to try and claim her birthright, she was a much more suitable candidate in Mag's eyes. She appeared to be quite frail and vulnerable, but her judgment and executive ability were clearly far superior to Cyril's. Anyone with even a tenth of a brain wouldn't say something like this in front of the city lord. The entire banquet hall had completely fallen silent as all of the guests looked at the disheveled Cyril with peculiar looks on their faces. The young master of the Moreton family had been reduced to such a sorry state by a spell cast by a 4-year-old girl. Furthermore, Mag was pinning the blame on Cyril and delivering a vicious insult in the process, making everyone wonder what was going to happen next. Of course, what was even more astonishing to everyone was that after Mag had expressed his intention to donate to Luna's foundation, Gloria had stepped forward and done the exact same thing. Gloria was a young mistress of the Moreton family. Technically speaking, she was also Cyril's niece. However, her decision to donate was undoubtedly a slap to the face for Cyril. The two of them were both candidates to inherit the Moreton family heirloom, and it could be seen that competition was quite fierce between the two. Initially, everyone hadn't been optimistic about Gloria's chances. However, following her stunning entrance and her recent actions, which pitted her directly against Cyril, many people were starting to change their mind about her. Looking at this beautiful young mistress, everyone couldn't help but think of the young mistress of the Buffett family, who had well and truly established herself as the family leader. Despite Jeffrey's sexist views, would he pass on his position of family leader to Gloria just as Old Man Buffett had? That was the question that had appeared in everyone's minds. Damn! She got there before me. Sheer stood at the entrance to her booth and looked at Gloria with a slightly frustrated expression. This little girl is quite interesting. Michael looked at Gloria, and a smile returned to his face. He then turned to Amy, and the smile on his face grew even wider. That ice fireball that she'd just unleashed really hit the spot. Jeffrey's clenched fists slowly relaxed, and he nodded slightly as he looked at Gloria, but he still didn't say anything. That guy seems to a stumbling block in my way. Camilla's eyes narrowed as she looked at Mag. Hey? Is that jealousy I smell? The black cat looked around with a confused expression. Mr. Mag. Luna looked at Mag, who had positioned himself in front of her and Amy, and her flustered heart was immediately put at ease. She felt as if nothing could harm her with Mag shielding her. Cyril's backside was throbbing with pain, but aside from that, he remained largely unscathed. However, he had been thoroughly humiliated in front of so many people, and his face was as red as a monkey's bum. Of course, what enraged him even more was Mag's nonchalant attitude, and the fact that Gloria had decided to stand directly against him. She had already stolen far too much of the spotlight tonight. You've only temporarily taken over the blue suede textile shop. What gives you the right to donate 10% of its earnings? Cyril looked at Gloria with a cold sneer on his face, and said, also, the blue suede textiles shop had been incurring losses for 3 consecutive years. You've been in charge for so many days, yet you haven't even sold as much as a single roll of fabric. In half a month, your shop is going to completely close down. What are you going to donate with, then? Exactly. Do you really think that you're an important member of the family now? How dare you make such a decision on your own? Herney scoffed. And why are you dressed in such a revealing manner? You're an absolute disgrace to our Moreton family. Herney also chuckled coldly as she glowered at Gloria with burning jealousy in her eyes. She had dominated the spotlight tonight, and it was all because of that beautiful dress. Looks like it's time for me to swoop in and save the damsel in distress. This time, I'm going to beat those bastards until they're half dead and win the heart of the beautiful maiden. A dangerous light suddenly flashed in Camilla's beautiful eyes. The president has already agreed to give me the blue suede textiles shop if I can make it a profitable business within a month. Hence, why don't I have the right to donate 10% of its earnings? Gloria completely ignored Herney and Herney as she looked at Cyril with a carefree expression, and retorted, I have absolute confidence in my ability to make blue suede a profitable business. By the way, it's no longer a textile shop, but a clothing store instead. This dress that I'm wearing now is one of the new products that our store is releasing. The cowardly ugly duckling has grown up to become a confident and beautiful swan. It's quite a heartwarming transformation. Looks like I was right to invest in her. Mag turned to Gloria with a gratified look in his eyes. In business, as well as many other aspects of life, one should never place all of their eggs in one basket. Collaborating with Sheer could change the Chamber of Commerce from the outside, yet investing in Gloria could change the entire Moreton family, thereby transforming the Chamber of Commerce from the inside. How is that possible? Cyril stared at Gloria's blue dress with an incredulous look in his eyes. Gloria's dress had attracted the attention of all of the guests present, and if such a gorgeous dress was made at her clothing store, then one could imagine how many orders she would receive from women desperate to get their hands on such a prized item of clothing. Furthermore, she had successfully advertised her blue suede clothing store and the dress that she was wearing to all of the guests present. These noble women had an immense spending power. Cyril couldn't even imagine how much they'd contribute to Gloria's clothing store's income. However, what he could be sure of was that as long as Gloria could provide a sufficient number of dresses, not only would blue suede become a profitable business, it would become a highly profitable one. Cyril laid a hand on the shoulder of a knight standing beside him to prop himself as a crushing sensation dawned on him. He had clearly already been defeated in this blue suede challenge, and the level of threat Gloria posed to him was no longer just a joke. Geez, she's not affording me any chances. Camilla had just stepped forward when she withdrew her foot with a frustrated look on her face. I think she might like men, the black cat murmured. Shush! How could there possibly be true love in a heterosexual relationship? The only thing fueling such a relationship is an animalistic reproductive instinct. Camilla punched the black cat's head again. That dress was produced by young Mistress Gloria's clothing store? It's called blue suede, right? Hurry up and record this important piece of information. We have to go to the shop and order one tomorrow. Looks like Cyril's beginning to lose his edge over Gloria in the contest to inherit Moreton family heirloom. Indeed. Young Mistress has displayed an exemplary business mind. I wonder if the President will choose her just like how Master Ian chose young Mistress Sheer. Many of the women who weren't yet aware of this news instantly became extremely interested, while the businessmen present were beginning to carefully contemplate the situation. They had to analyze everything with utmost caution and pick the right person to support between Cyril and Gloria. Hertie's and Herney's expression had already darkened considerably. It would have been more acceptable to them had Gloria hurled insults back at them. However, the fact that she was ignoring them told them that they were no longer even on the same level as her. Geoffrey, are you planning to emulate Ian and hand over the Moreton family to her? I think she'll be a worthy adversary for that little girl from the Buffett family, Michael asked as he turned to Geoffrey. As he did so, he wore a smile on his face, but the expression in his eyes was extremely sharp. I gave her a chance, but it's up to her to prove herself. If she wants to inherit the family, she'll have to work harder than her male counterpart. Geoffrey looked at Gloria, and shook his head as he said, she's still very far off compared to that little girl from the Buffett family. You should be happy with what you have. Not everyone grew up in a bank like Sheer did. Michael chuckled. Geoffrey didn't offer a reply, but he was looking at Gloria with an expression of contemplation and gratification. Big sister is so awesome today. I feel like she changed into a completely different person. Mickey looked on at Gloria with his mouth gaping wide open. The concern in his heart had been entirely replaced by shock and pride. Gloria really has grown up. She's far more exceptional than I was at her age. Lance's expression was caught somewhere between gratification and heartache. Indeed, she's all grown up now. She's become a confident and beautiful young woman. Deborah held onto Lance's hand with a smile as tears shimmered in her eyes. Cyril composed himself and took a deep breath to calm down. He took his hand off the knight's shoulder and looked at Gloria with a cold sneer as he said, even if you and he are willing to donate, that's only something that idiots like you would be willing to do. Will you be able to find others as stupid as you here? Let me see how you are going to fill this bottomless pit. The Buffett family will take care of providing education for these homeless children. Shear stepped forward and looked up at Luna as she said, Ms. Luna, please give me a proposed plan and a quote for the costs involved. Regardless of whether you plan on building a separate school or to enroll these children into Chaos School, Buffett Banks will provide all of the funds necessary. All right. Luna's eyes immediately lit up as she stared at Shear with an astonished expression. President Jeffrey, only several decades have passed since the founding of our Chamber of Commerce, but everyone here seems to have already forgotten that your fathers and forefathers were merely ordinary people as well. Now that we've risen to prosperity, why can't we donate some of our money to help these children? Shear turned her attention to Jeffrey with a smile, and asked, President Jeffrey, would you be willing to act like an idiot just this once and donate for the sake of the children? Cyril's face immediately turned deathly pale. Never had he thought that Shear would suddenly step forward. Not only was she promising what was surely going to be a massive donation to Luna's proposed fund, she was kicking the ball into Jeffrey's court as well. Regardless of whether Jeffrey agreed to her proposal or not, Cyril knew that he had been well and truly beaten. His dignity had been swept to the ground, and Jeffrey's impression of him had deteriorated even further. A wide array of expressions also appeared on the faces of the guests present. The businessmen that were affiliated with the Buffett family were contemplating how much they should donate, while the businessmen affiliated with the Moreton family all turned to Jeffrey. Jeffrey and Shear's battle for the presidency had clearly already begun. Shear was trying to knock the final nail into Cyril's coffin while exerting an immense amount of pressure on Jeffrey. If Jeffrey wanted to protect Cyril, then he definitely wouldn't agree to donate, and all of the businessmen that were affiliated with the Moreton family would also refrain from doing so. Michael turned his gaze toward Jeffrey, but didn't say anything. Meanwhile, Mag was appraising Shear with a hint of amazement on his face. As expected of the woman who was able to take over a major family at just the tender age of 18, she truly possessed a brilliant mind. If Jeffrey refused to donate in order to protect Cyril, then Michael's impression of him would definitely sour, and here in Chaos City, no one wanted to get on the city lord's bad side. However, if he were to agree to donate, he would please Michael, but he would also be completely leaving Cyril out in the cold. That would undoubtedly prove to be a heavy blow in his plight to inherit the family heirloom, and his decision would definitely sway many of the businessmen affiliated with the Moreton family toward Gloria. Jeffrey looked at Cyril before turning to Gloria, upon which he nodded, and said, I concur with Gloria's suggestion. In addition to the 10% of earnings that she'll be donating from her Blue Suit clothing store, the Moreton family is going to take care of the housing issue for these children so all of them will have a roof over their heads. I'm sure the children will be very grateful to you, President Jeffrey, Shear said with a smile. There was a hint of elation in her eyes, suggesting that her ploy had resulted in a resounding success. Thank you, President Jeffrey. Luna bowed deeply toward the VIP area as tears began to well up in her eyes. In the beginning, she had only been hoping to secure sufficient donations to buy food for the children over the winter. However, she had gotten far more than she could ever hope for. With these massive donations rolling in, these children would be able to enjoy a much more wonderful childhood. Cyril stumbled back a couple of steps, and only managed to stay upright after a knight had lent him a supporting hand. However, his face was deathly pale, and there was cold sweat running down his face. The cold glance that Jeffrey had just cast toward him made him feel as if he had been plunged into a glacial pit, and his decision clearly indicated that he had chosen Gloria over him on this occasion. The president is donating, and he chose to support young Mistress Gloria. Could it be that young Mistress Gloria is going to become the second young Mistress Shear? That's too difficult to predict for now, but one thing's for sure, we have to play the idiot and donate as well. All of the guests present began to discuss urgently among themselves, wondering what drastic changes this mid-year banquet was going to bring to the Chamber of Commerce. Ms. Luna's proposal has touched me greatly, and I'm also very pleased and grateful that all of you are willing to donate to these underprivileged children. Michael stood up from his seat, and his powerful voice rang out across the entire banquet hall as he said, "At the same time, I hope that everyone can learn a lesson from this. Here in Chaos City, the societal hierarchy isn't set in stone. We're going to strive to educate the entire population so that even the lower-class citizens will have a chance to prove their worth." Cyril leaned his body heavily against the knight beside him for support, and suddenly felt very cold. "Mag, I'd like to invite you to Rodo." Mag looked on at Luna, who was expressing her gratitude to the donating businessmen over and over again, and a smile appeared on his face. "Those children will be very grateful to you, Mr. Mag." Sheer made her way over to Mag with a smile. "You're providing them with education and a future, young Mistress Sheer, they should be far more grateful to you." Mag shook his head as he turned to Sheer with an earnest expression. "If it weren't for what you said, perhaps I wouldn't have agreed to donate to those children. After all, businessmen aren't philanthropists, and all of us prioritize profits above all else." A meaningful smile appeared on Sheer's face. "No matter what your incentive or intentions are, the important thing is that you are donating and making a change. That places you above all of the people who only speak empty words yet don't take any action. After all, no matter how many kind words you offer to a homeless child, it's still much more practical and beneficial to them if you give them something to eat or somewhere to stay," Mag said with a smile. In his past life, many of the philanthropic businessmen were simply donating so they could forge a positive image for and to promote themselves in order to secure greater profits in the future. However, Mag had always been of the opinion that even though their intentions might not have been philanthropic in nature, they were still at least making a change, as opposed to the keyboard warriors who claimed the moral high ground in internet comment sections but didn't donate a single cent themselves. In this case, the intrinsic motivation was merely a trivial secondary factor. "Your thoughts and ideas are always so interesting." Sheer faltered slightly as she looked at the genuine smile on Mag's face, and she suddenly felt as if she was still unable to see through this man. "You're also a very interesting person, young Mistress Sheer." Even though she was only 18 years old, Sheer gave Mag the impression of a wily old fox who had been toiling in the business world for several decades. "Looks like I should afford you some personal space. I'll see you tomorrow at your restaurant after the breakfast service," Sheer said with a smile as she looked at an approaching Gloria. She strode forward a couple of steps and stopped in front of Gloria with a smile on her face as she said, "Young Mistress Gloria, I hear that you are only making one of each color in the style of the dress that you are wearing. Would I be able to reserve the red one?" Gloria looked directly into Sheer's eyes, and nodded as she replied, "Of course you can. All right, here are my measurements. Once it's done, I'll come to your shop to collect it in person." Sheer handed a slip of paper over to Gloria and nodded before walking away. But Gloria wanted to tell Sheer that the shop didn't offer tailored clothing, but Sheer had already struck up a conversation with someone else in the crowd. At this moment, Mag appeared beside Gloria and smiled as he said, "Seeing as only one dress of each color will be made, perhaps you can make an exception and offer tailored clothing just this once." "Can I do that?" Gloria was seemingly a little lost. "The price you charge will be determined by the services you offer. Additional services will incur additional costs." Mag nodded in reply. Gloria's eyes lit up as she nodded firmly. "I understand. Your entrance tonight was very spectacular. As long as you set an appropriate price for your dresses, you'll be able to easily make your clothing store a profitable business," Mag encouraged. "Thank you, Mr. Mag. I really don't know how to express my gratitude to you." Gloria turned to Mag with a grateful expression. "When those homeless children put on their new clothes, they'll definitely be very happy. Their smiles will be the best form of gratitude for me," Mag replied with a smile. "All right, once these dresses are done, I'll get them to make a batch of clothes for the children as quickly as possible." Gloria nodded with an enchanting smile. "This bastard is going to be the biggest hurdle in my path to pursuing young Mistress Gloria." Camilla looked at Mag with a cold expression. "But his steak is super delicious," the black cat reminded in a quiet voice. It is. That steak was far too delicious. I've never had such an amazing steak in my life. A scorching light appeared in Camilla's eyes as a conflicted look surfaced on her face. After hesitating for a long while, she finally heaved a resigned sigh, and said, "All right, seeing as you cook such a delicious steak, I'll let you live for now." Mag and Gloria chatted for a while before Gloria was practically wrenched away by all of the noble women who were scrambling to reserve dresses from her. Mag made his way over to Amy, who was stuffing a mandarin into her mouth, and he smiled as he said, "Are you still not full? Father, this mandarin is super sweet. Do you want to try it?" Amy wore a joyful smile as she raised a section of the mandarin high up above her head. Mag leaned down and bit into the mandarin section, savoring the explosion of fruit juices in his mouth. He nodded with a smile, and said, "It's indeed very sweet. Mr. Mag, thank you so much. All of the children finally have a chance to go to school now." Luna had finally seen off the final donating businessman, by which point she already had a journal filled with names and donation amounts. After doing all that, she immediately hurried over to Mag with an excited expression. "I didn't think you'd be so influential, Boss Mag. You set the entire scene alight." Vivian also gave Mag a thumbs up with an exhilarated look on her face. It's Teacher Luna's speech that truly touched everyone. "As for influence, no one was more influential than you and the City Lord," Mag said with a smile. "In any case, just for your righteous display tonight, I'm going to visit your restaurant regularly for grilled fish," Vivian promised with an earnest expression. "Thank you so very much." Luna bowed deeply toward Mag. She knew that Mag was the one who had effected the turning point, and in doing so, he had offended Cyril and the Moraton family. "Teacher Luna, I have a great deal of respect for what you did. In comparison, what I've done is not worthy of a mention." Mag hurriedly helped Luna into an upright position. Right at this moment, a voice sounded from behind Mag. "Mr. Mag, my name is K. Rawls, and I'm the Roth Empire's ambassador. Would I be able to speak with you in private?" Mag turned round, only to discover a tall and broad middle-aged man with brown hair and green eyes in a set of golden robes. He was none other than the Roth Empire's ambassador who had been one of the judges during the cooking contest. "Greetings, Ambassador, what would you like to speak with me about?" A hint of surprise appeared in Mag's eyes, but he did his best to calm himself down. This was the first time he was interacting with an official from the Roth Empire, and this was an official who was affiliated with Josh's faction, so he had to be cautious about what he did and said. "This way, please." K. Rawls pointed toward one of the nearby booths before striding toward it. Mag hesitated momentarily, but still quickly followed him in the end. After walking into the booth, K. Rawls turned to Mag and cut straight to the chase. "Mr. Mag, I'd like to invite you to Rodu to cook some dishes for His Majesty's 60th birthday." "Hey!" Mag stared at K. Rawls with a shocked expression on his face. He had thought of many reasons why K. Rawls would perhaps wish to speak with him, but never had he thought that he would extend an invitation for Mag to travel to Rodu and cook for the king. "His Majesty's birthday is coming soon, and Prince Josh asked me to find a suitable present for His Majesty. After tasting your steak tonight, I think there is no better present for His Majesty than for you to cook a few dishes for him." K. Rawls was very pleased with Mag's reaction. Indeed, it was an immense honor to be able to cook for the king of the Roth Empire. A reluctant expression appeared on Mag's face as he said, "Ambassador K. Rawls, I'm really flattered that you think so highly of me, but my cooking really isn't worthy of being offered to His Majesty. If something were to go wrong, I would be killed, but most importantly, it would make you and Prince Josh look bad as well, and that would be a heinous crime on my part. Only an idiot would go." Mag rolled his eyes internally. Alex had escaped from Rodu under extremely arduous circumstances 3 years ago, yet K. Rawls was asking him to go back? He certainly wasn't stupid enough to agree to such a suicidal proposal. Josh and the Magus Tower were definitely behind the ambush 3 years ago. He definitely had a vendetta against Josh, but at his current power level, he wouldn't even be able to take out Josh's guards, let alone exact his revenge. As such, he didn't have any excuse to go to Rodu before he recovered his full strength. Right at this moment, the system's voice sounded. Ding! New mission, accept this man's invitation and travel to Rodu to cook for the king. Reward for mission completion, 1 supermassive reward. On top of that, the restaurant will immediately be upgraded to level 3. Punishment for mission failure, 3 strength points will be deducted. Did you buy a life insurance policy for me and set yourself as the beneficiary party? Mag asked internally. The system doesn't offer insurance services, the system replied in a serious manner. Then you're pushing me straight into a fire pit. Are you that keen to kill me so you can find a new host? Is Rodu a place I can go to as my current self? If I go there, there's going to be nothing left of me soon. Mag roared internally. The system was being downright preposterous. Furthermore, the punishment for mission failure was completely unacceptable to Mag. He currently only had 3.5 strength points, and if 3 of them were to be deducted, he would be borderline disabled again. Why don't you adjust the punishment for mission failure to a deduction of 3.5 strength points instead? Don't even bother leaving the half of a strength point for me. Mag added. If I deduct 3.5 strength points, you'll be killed right away. That goes against the system's moral code, so it cannot be done. Also, don't get so worked up about this. After consulting the database, I've deduced that there's a 50% chance that there won't be any danger involved with this trip. Hence, you have a very high probability of survival, the system replied earnestly. I'm fine as I currently am. Why do I have to do something that has a 50% chance of getting me killed? Mag was still very displeased. The system gave a serious reply. This unforeseen event has triggered one of the system's hidden missions. On the birthday banquet for the King of the Roth Empire, the best chefs of the Roth Empire would be in attendance. You must challenge and defeat those top-grade chefs during the birthday banquet. That will be a preliminary victory for you on your path to becoming the god of cookery, and it can take your reputation and renown to greater heights. This is a process that a god of cookery must go through. So there's no way to change this. Mag took a deep breath. He had already guessed that this would be the system's intention. It was planning to plunge him into a make-or-break situation at the king's birthday banquet, but Mag was still reluctant to expose himself to such a massive risk. The system doesn't have the right to change hidden missions, so this mission must be enforced with absolute strictness. I wish you good luck. The system fell silent thereafter. Kairal's expression stiffened upon hearing Mag's unexpected refusal. However, it appeared that Mag was simply concerned about his own cooking skills, so he offered an encouraging smile, and said, "You're being far too modest, Mr. Mag. Even after dining at all of the renowned restaurants in Rodu and Chaos City, the steak that you made was still the best thing I've ever had. City Lord Michael and President Jeffrey have also expressed their approval for your cooking skills. If your cooking doesn't make the cut, then there's no one in Chaos City that can even call themselves a chef." Well, a hesitant expression appeared on Mag's face. He had just had what appeared to be a lengthy argument with the system, but only a few moments had passed by in the real world. At this point, he was still scrambling for a way to get out of this situation, and he didn't know whether he should accept Kairal's invitation or not. He didn't want to go to Rodu, but he was even more averse to becoming a cripple. Thus, he had no choice. Kairal's was greatly assured by the hesitancy that had appeared on Mag's face, and his smile widened even further as he said, "Mr. Mag, if you agree to travel to Rodu, Prince Josh will definitely reward you handsomely. Not only will you receive immense remuneration just for making this trip, if your cooking can please His Majesty, then you might get a chance to remain in the Imperial Palace as a chef. Furthermore, His Highness will give you an additional reward that'll ensure you're never left wanting for money for the rest of your life." Mag quickly adopted a calm expression as he looked at Kairal's. In a voice that was neither haughty nor excessively humble, he replied, "Thank you for giving me this opportunity, Ambassador K. Rawls. However, I'm still running a restaurant and raising a small child at the moment, so I'll need some time to consider whether I can travel to Rodu or not." "All right, then I'll be awaiting a response from you, Mr. Mag." K. Rawls was slightly taken aback by Mag's response, but he didn't press the issue any further. Instead, he added, "By the way, I'll be returning to Rodu in 15 days to attend His Majesty's birthday banquet, so I hope you can give me a definitive response before then." "I'll be sure to do so." Mag nodded before exiting the booth. "This is a fantastic present, I wonder if Mr. Mag is going to agree or not. If this weren't Chaos City, I'd make sure to take him with me even if I had to tie him up." K. Rawls heaved a resigned sigh as he looked on at Mag's departing figure. As soon as he emerged from the booth, Mag was quickly surrounded by a bunch of businessmen. He only managed to shake them off with great difficulty before returning to Amy's side. At the conclusion of the banquet, Amy's use of magic was only addressed by Michael in a few airy remarks, but he didn't extend any punishment or warning toward her. Mag emerged from the banquet hall behind Amy and Luna while cradling a sound asleep ugly duckling in his right arm. Luna was walking up ahead with Amy's little hand in hers. She was wearing a stern expression as she chastised, "Amy, even though you were protecting me today, you can't use magic so carelessly in a setting with so many people. That man today was a very bad person, but not bad enough that he should be killed. The people around him were even more innocent, and if they ended up being injured or killed by your magic, then you would have done something bad." "But, he insulted Father," Amy retorted quietly with a pitiable look on her face. "Yes, I heard that as well, but we can't just carelessly take other people's lives no matter what. That is a rule that you must hold yourself accountable to." Luna stopped and squatted down beside Amy. She looked into Amy's eyes with a serious expression, and asked, "Can you do that for me?" "Hey, is your wife really dead?" Vivian suddenly asked as she walked along beside Mag. Mag, who was in the process of learning how to educate Amy from Luna, immediately faltered upon hearing that. He turned to the inquisitive Vivian, and a hint of unease welled up in his heart. He was silent for a while before shaking his head as he replied, "She didn't die, she ran away." "With another man?" Vivian seemed to have suddenly been enlightened. She patted Mag's shoulder with a consolatory expression as she said, "It's all right, you can always find another. A woman like that was always going to leave you anyway. Speaking of which, I'm really surprised that there's a woman in this world capable of leaving you. I'm suddenly really curious, what kind of woman would resist your cooking? Or what kind of man could be even more irresistible than your food?" A curious look appeared on Vivian's face. Mag's expression immediately darkened. He felt as if he had suddenly become a pitiful kook. "It's not what you think. I can only say that our relationship was a happy mistake, it doesn't have anything to do with anyone else." Mag made an effort to make himself look as nonchalant about this as possible. "It's all right, I understand. Something like this must be quite difficult to accept for any man." Vivian nodded with a knowing expression. Mag rolled his eyes, and couldn't be bothered to provide any further explanation. "So that means she most likely won't be coming back, right? Alternatively, if she did come back, would you forgive her?" Vivian asked. "Of course I'd forgive her. After all, she's the mother of my child." Mag could already guess what Vivian's intentions were, and he nodded with a smile. Tisk, tisk, I didn't think you'd be such a selfless man," Vivian said with a disappointed expression. Mag merely gave her an ambiguous smile in response. This little girl's reflex arc was very strange, and one could easily be led astray in a conversation with her. "I understand, Teacher Luna." Amy nodded with a serious expression. "Good girl. Because of our little Amy, all of the other kids will be able to go to school and have new clothes to wear." A warm smile reappeared on Luna's face as she patted Amy's head. Will they be coming to Chaos School as well? Amy's eyes immediately lit up. Luna shook her head, and replied, I'm not too sure at the moment. I have to ask the principal first. It would naturally be the best if they could attend Chaos School. You're the best, Teacher Luna. Amy wound her arms around Luna's neck and planted a kiss on her cheek with a vibrant smile on her face. You're also a very good girl. Teacher Luna planted a gentle kiss on Amy's forehead. Sigh, it's such a pity. Vivian looked at Luna and Amy's interaction with a forlorn expression. She then turned to Mag with a meaningful look. Mag looked up into the night sky, and murmured to himself, there sure are a lot of stars in the sky. Looks like there's a reason why your wife ran off with someone else, after all, Vivian grumbled as she looked at Mag. My wife didn't run off with anyone. Mag was almost unable to resist the urge to retort. After watching Luna and Vivian get onto a horse-drawn carriage, Mag dragged out his bicycle from the side and was preparing to go home with Amy when two shadowy figures suddenly appeared up ahead. Mag narrowed his eyes as he shielded Amy behind him. A hint of surprise appeared on his face as he asked, Mistress Bartoli, what can I do for you? If you thought my steak wasn't bad today, you can come and taste it again tomorrow at Mamie Restaurant. The two shadowy figures were none other than that sexy Mistress Bartoli and that black cat, which had donned its black robes again. Meow. Ugly Duckling suddenly woke up as it lay in the bicycle's basket before turning to the black cat with a menacing expression. I'm here for the steak. Camilla's voice abruptly cut off as she stomped her foot with anger. She had prepared a script in her mind, but her train of thought had been completely led astray by Mag's words, causing her to immediately think of that incredibly delicious steak. She cleared her throat, and began again. I'm here to warn you to stay away from young Mistress Gloria, she's someone that I have my eyes set on. Mag raised an eyebrow as he looked at Camilla with a surprised expression. He was finding it difficult to believe that he was hearing such an idiotic threat from the captivating Mistress Bartoli. Furthermore, what was this about her having her eyes set on Gloria? There was too much information in that sentence, and even with Mag's comprehension abilities, it still took him a full 3 seconds to understand. This Mistress Bartoli was most likely a lesbian, and she had fallen in love with Gloria, identifying Mag as a rival in love. That was why she was stopping him in the middle of a street and issuing such an immature warning to him, actions that were more befitting of a middle school student. Of course, Mag had never done something like this ever since he graduated from primary school. Young Mistress Gloria and I are collaborating with one another, so we definitely have to communicate on a work basis. Mag looked at Camilla with a rather speechless expression. Don't think that I wouldn't do anything to you just because you make a good steak. My reputation is not something to be scoffed at. I have all sorts of cruel torture devices in my dungeon, and if you dare to refuse, I'll let you taste the sensation of getting belted by a leather whip while having hot candle wax dripped onto your body. Camilla raised her chin slightly with a menacing look in her eyes. Mag looked at the threatening Mistress Bartoli, and the mental image of her holding a candle while swiping a small leather whip through the air surfaced in his mind. Mag got rid of that rather bizarre train of thought, and put on a serious expression as he said, Please rest assured, Mistress Bartoli, young Mistress Gloria and I are purely in a collaborative relationship with no romantic elements involved. I'm a man with a daughter. That's true. Camilla nodded after a brief moment of contemplation. Whoosh! The sound of fabric flapping through the air erupted. Wow! Such a big black cat! Amy had crept over to Camilla, and was holding a corner of the black cat's robe. The robe had been pulled off its body again, revealing its true form, and Amy was looking up at it with a joyful expression. Meow! The black cat faltered momentarily before all of its fur instantly bristled. It was like a woman who had just been stripped naked, and it immediately dove into Camilla's arms as it glared at Amy with a resentful expression. Meow! Ugly Duckling cried out in excitement. It laid its 2 front paws on the edge of the bicycle's basket, appearing as if it were going to jump out at any moment. Remember your promise. Camilla ignored Amy as she looked at Mag with a cold expression. She then turned around with her black cat in her arms before pausing as she said, "I'll be visiting your restaurant tomorrow night, you'd better be adequately prepared." She then continued onward and suddenly transformed into a cloud of black mist, and then into a huge bat as she disappeared into the distance in the blink of an eye. Mag laid a hand on his forehead and shook his head with an exasperated expression. As expected, this Mistress Bartoli really was no ordinary person. "Look at her, ugly duckling, she can even fly, yet you can't even walk without panting. You can't fly because you're too fat. From tomorrow onward, your food will be cut in half." Amy's serious voice sounded, followed by a pitiable meow. Mag rode his bicycle toward the restaurant with furrowed brows as he contemplated his trip to Rodu. It appeared that the trip was unavoidable, that much was certain. As such, the most important thing was to ensure a higher level of safety, and that his true identity as Alex wouldn't be exposed. His enemies were too powerful. If his cover were to be blown as he currently was, there was no way that he would be able to survive. "Under the bridge in front of my door, a brood of ducks swims by." Amy sat on the back seat with a joyful expression, singing a song about counting ducks. She appeared to be in a very good mood. Meanwhile, Ugly Duckling was lying in the bicycle's basket, rolling from side to side with a suicidal expression while suppressing the urge to barf. "Father, do you like my singing?" Amy suddenly cut off Mag's train of thought. "Hey!" Mag faltered slightly, and an apologetic look appeared on his face as he said, "That was really good, Amy. Can you sing another song for me?" "Of course I can. Let me sing about the mushroom-picking little girl." Amy was very pleased by Mag's compliment, and she continued, "The mushroom-picking girl has a basket on her back." Her crisp and tender voice was very pleasing to the ears, and as Mag listened, he was able to set all of his worries aside. Amy was always able to instill in him a sense of tranquility as if she was his safe haven. The bicycle stopped outside the restaurant, and Mag carried Amy and Ugly Duckling as he made his way toward the restaurant. Everything was pitch black inside the restaurant, and Mag found that to be rather perplexing. "Why are the lights off? Is Babla already asleep? Is Big Sister Babla a little piglet? Why is she sleeping so early?" Amy giggled. "Perhaps she is," Mag replied with a smile. He pulled the key out of his pocket and unlocked the door. Just as he was about to open the door and walk in, he suddenly discovered a shadow lying sprawled at the restaurant's entrance, and it seemed to be a humanoid figure. "Holy f***ck. Mag was so startled that he almost dropped his key. He crept gingerly into the restaurant, only to find a humanoid figure lying face down on the ground with a head of disheveled long hair. "It's Big Sister Babla. What happened to her?" Amy asked with a nervous expression as she held Ugly Duckling in her arms. Mag turned on the light, and found that it was indeed Babla lying on the floor. Her left arm hung limply by her side, while her right index finger was extended, having seemingly written something on the ground with her fingertip. Her face was very pale, and she lay completely stationary. "Is this a murder crime scene?" A chill ran down Mag's spine upon seeing this. He hurriedly bent down and put a finger on Babla's neck. Her skin was slightly cool to the touch, but he could still feel a faint pulse in her neck. He heaved a sigh of relief upon making that discovery. At the very least, she wasn't dead. "There are some words here," Amy said as she pointed to Babla's hand. Mag picked up Babla's hand, only to find a few words scrawled out using black charcoal powder, "Give me beef kebabs." Mag then inspected Babla's outstretched right index finger, and saw that there was also remnant black charcoal powder on her fingertip. Could she have fainted from hunger? Mag looked at Babla with a slightly farcical expression. Prior to going out for the banquet, he had left some dinner for Babla in a thermal box. She was sleeping at the time, so he wrote her a note and plastered it onto the kitchen's door. "Father, what should we do now?" Amy turned to Mag with a curious expression on her face. "Let's get her awake first." Mag flipped Babla over before picking her up in his arms. She was only around 1.55 meters tall, and her chest was completely flat, so she weighed about as much as a child. Mag's footsteps faltered as he said to the system, "System, do a full body scan on her and tell me what's wrong with her." The system's voice sounded in reply. "You do not have the right to request diagnoses, please upgrade the Re 500 copper coins for one diagnosis, deal or no deal." Mag immediately cut the system off. "Deal," the system immediately replied. Ding! Diagnosis completed. 500 copper coins have been deducted. Diagnosis report is ready. The system's voice soon sounded again. Mag placed Babla on a table nearby and began to read through the diagnosis report in his mind. Babla, 15 years old, gender, female, power level, 7th tier spatial magic caster. Diagnosis report, severely low blood sugar level. Severe anemia. Severe flat-chestedness. Other physical markers are all normal. System, what the hell is this flat-chestedness? Mag was starting to doubt his eyes. From a medical perspective, severe flat-chestedness is also a gynecological disease. If left untreated, it could have severe negative implications on a woman's mentality and self-esteem, the system explained in a serious manner. "You sure know how to bullsh***. Mag rolled his eyes, he couldn't be bothered to argue with the system. Severely low blood sugar level and severe anemia, it's quite ironic that a pampered princess is suffering from these conditions. However, seeing as a diagnosis had been made, Mag knew what he had to do. At the very least, it wasn't something serious like a heart attack or terminal cancer. Some food and water should be enough to help her recover. Mag made his way into the kitchen and poured a glass of spring of life water. He then added 2 spoonfuls of sugar to it before helping Babla up and feeding her the simple concoction. After a while, a hint of color appeared to Babla's pale cheeks, and her feeble breathing also gradually quickened. At the same time, her body temperature had also risen slightly. Where am I? Babla slowly opened her eyes in a feeble manner. Her gaze then fell on Mag's face, and she immediately stiffened upon realizing how close his face was to her own. Babla suddenly felt as if she had regained feeling all over her body. The sensation of the large warm hand on her back made her eyes widen immediately. A blush appeared on her face as she immediately stood up on the table. However, she was still quite feeble and unable to support her own weight, and thus stumbled into Mag's arms. Her arms reflexively wound themselves around his neck, and her face was even closer to his than it had been before. "Come on now, I only saved you in a humane gesture, there's no need for you to dive into my arms like this." Mag was still holding a glass in his hand, and he looked at Babla with a resigned expression. He simply couldn't even work up a shred of interest in an undeveloped little girl like her. A panicked look appeared on Babla's face as she unconsciously released her hands. As a result, her face slid down Mag's chest, all the way until she was kneeling before him. Babla looked up at Mag, and suddenly wished that she were dead. Not only had a man laid his hands on her, she was now kneeling before him. What was even more terrifying to her was that her face had slid down this man's body, all the way from his chest to his legs. She was slightly surprised by the rock-hard body of the man beneath the clothes, but she was much more focused on the sense of asphyxiating humiliation that was crashing down on her. How could something like this happen to her, Princess Babla of the Moon Nation? How could she let a man touch her body? This man should be the one kneeling before her. And yet, Babla discovered that she was completely unable to move. She was unable to muster up any strength in her feeble body, and felt as if her knees had been nailed to the ground, rendering her completely unable to move. She wasn't even able to get out of this embarrassing position. Could it be that this man spiked the water with something? Maybe it's a drug that would place a woman completely at his mercy after drinking it. But Amy's right there. This bastard. All men really are trash. Babla's eyes widened as she stared at Mag with a panicked expression. "Big sister Babla, are you thanking father?" Amy asked. Mag was also rather taken aback by the sight of Babla kneeling before him. This little girl was quite haughty at times, but it appeared that she knew the importance of being grateful for other people's kindness. It was just that her method of expressing gratitude was rather jarring to Mag. "There's no need for you to be like this, you're an employee of my restaurant, after all." Mag shook his head with a smile and helped Babla to her feet. He gently placed her on a nearby chair, and handed her the glass in his hand as he said, "You have severely low blood sugar level and severe anemia, so you can't starve yourself. Otherwise, you could easily faint or have something even worse happen to you. I put some sugar in this water for you to drink." Low blood sugar level? Anemia? Babla was very confused. Could it be that Mag knew what condition she was suffering from? And was he trying to save her rather than take advantage of her just then? She has low blood sugar level, so she has to drink sugar. Amy turned to Mag with a curious expression, and asked, "So if big sister Babla's anemic, will she have to drink blood?" "1. I won't drink blood even if the only other alternative is death." Before Mag had a chance to say anything, Babla had already raised her chin with a determined expression. "I wouldn't have any blood for you to drink even if you wanted some." Mag pursed his lips in response. He had no intention of turning Babla into a vampire. He held the glass gently to Babla's lips before slowly tilting it upward. Babla wanted to refuse initially, but as soon as the glass approached her, a faint fragrant aroma came wafting toward her, and just taking a whiff of it was making her head feel clearer. It was just like the faint fragrance that was detectable in the Young Joe fried rice. After a brief hesitation, she opened her mouth and accepted the drink that Mag was offering her. The liquid in the glass was cool and refreshing, giving her a sense of reinvigoration. As Mag had said, a copious amount of sugar had been added and it was very sweet, yet not overwhelmingly so. After taking a few sips of the spring of life, Babla suddenly felt a delightful and mysterious type of energy rising up in her body. The leaden sensation in her arms gradually disappeared, and her feeble body was filled with energy again. "Looks like you're all right now. Do you still need me to feed you?" A smile appeared on Mag's face at the sight of Babla's improving condition. "I don't need anyone to feed me." Babla snatched the glass away from Mag. She looked at the warm smile on Mag's face and Amy's concerned look, and she cast her eyes downward as she said, "I'm already used to this anyway." Mag looked at Babla as she sipped her water with her head bowed. This haughty princess seemed to be more resolute than he had imagined. Even though she had had a privileged upbringing, she still had to carry a lot on those frail shoulders of hers. "With your condition, you can't starve yourself. I prepared some dinner for you before going out and put it in a thermos box. I left a note for you on the kitchen door," and Mag pointed toward the kitchen door before turning to look at Babla as an expression of apology appeared on his face. You might not have been able to see it. A height that he thought to be normal was already well above head height for Babla. If she didn't actively search for the note, it really would be quite difficult for her to see it. Babla continued to sip on her drink. The one thing that she detested the most was other people making fun of her height. If it weren't for the fact that Mag had saved her in the nick of time, she would have definitely made him pay for that remark. "Let me go cook something for you. Beef kebabs require marination, so I'll cook some steak instead." Mag made his way over to the kitchen with a slightly awkward look on his face. If news of the fact that he had almost starved one of his employees to death were to spread, then he would definitely be accused of being an abusive employer. "Steak?" A hint of confusion appeared on Babla's face. There didn't appear to be such a dish on the restaurant menu. Amy sat down in front of Babla with a serious expression and said, "Father's steak is super delicious. Everyone who has tasted it has agreed with me. More delicious than roast beef kebabs." Babla was quite skeptical. "It's just as good as roast beef kebabs," Amy replied. "Really?" Babla's eyes lit up with a hint of anticipation. Roast beef kebabs were the best beef dish she had ever had. "Of course." Amy nodded in confirmation. Mag walked into the kitchen, and found that the kitchenware required for cooking steak was already in there. The roasting bench allowed him to cook 8 steaks at once, which was enough to satisfy the daily demand. In the 32-grid condiments container, a box of black pepper powder had filled up a new grid. After opening the fridge, Mag also discovered a pile of steaks of identical thickness and with almost identical marbling stacked up in plates, which was very convenient for him. Beside the kitchen cupboard, a new oakwood barrel had appeared, attached to the bottom of which was an antiquated tap that could regulate the flow of the fluid within. Mag made his way over to the barrel and took a whiff. The faint aroma of red wine intermingled with the distinct fragrance of oak wafted toward him. His eyes lit up, and he praised, "That's some fine wine." He picked up a transparent glass and turned the tap on, sending vibrant red wine flowing into the glass. The wine was as red as blood yet translucent and completely devoid of impurities. The rich aroma of red wine immediately filled the entire kitchen. Mag gently swirled the glass, causing the wine to ripple slightly before taking a sip. A fine yet bright flavor spread over his palate, evoking the imagery of a sprightly young maiden who was gentle and reserved. The alluring flavor contained traces of honey, vanilla, and some minerals, all of which were extremely pleasing to Mag's system. "Where did you steal this wine from?" Mag opened his eyes as he stared at the glass in his hand with surprise and joy on his face. One Amy was able to make this connection so quickly, as anemia literally means lacking in blood in Chinese. That's why she was able to immediately link anemia, shortage of red blood cells, to blood. In the northern region of the city, where the Roth Empire's embassy was, K. Rawls made his way out of his study and passed an envelope to the waiting butler. He wore a serious expression on his face as he said, "Send this letter to Prince Josh via a messenger falcon." "Yes, master." The butler accepted the envelope with both hands before hurrying away into the backyard. K. Rawls was just about to return to his study when a series of slightly urgent footsteps sounded from behind him. "Father, I have something to speak to you about." A tall and thin young man approached him quickly from the courtyard outside. The young man's hooked nose bore a slight resemblance to K. Rawls, and he had a head of brown hair. His face was of a slightly sickly pallor, but he seemed to be in high spirits as he quickly made his way over to K. Rawls. "What do you want to speak to me about, Ryan?" K. Rawls asked with a smile. He had always been very benevolent and loving toward this frail second son of his. "Father, after you return to Rodu and are debriefed, will you be staying in Rodu and no longer act as an ambassador here in Chaos City?" Ryan asked. "That's right. If everything goes according to plan, I'll be assigned a role in Rodu and stay there. That's why your mother and sister went back to Rodu a month ago. You'll be returning to Rodu with me." K. Rawls nodded in response. He had mentioned this to Ryan once before. He was wondering why Ryan was bringing this up again. "Has it already been confirmed?" A slightly dejected look appeared on Ryan's face. "After returning to Rodu this time, Prince Josh has promised me a higher-ranking position in the capital. This is a good thing. Why do you look so depressed?" K. Rawls asked with a smile. Ryan's expression was a little hesitant. "Go on, you can tell your father anything. Could it be that a girl caught your eye tonight?" K. Rawls chuckled. Ryan was already 18 years old, officially an adult. Ryan scratched his head in a slightly embarrassed manner, and replied, It's young Mistress Gloria of the Moraton family. I was thinking that if we're going to leave Chaos City in half a month, I was wondering if you could come with me to the Moraton family manor so I can ask for her hand in marriage. You've got a good eye, my boy. That young Mistress Gloria is indeed a beautiful and cultured young lady." K. Rawls nodded with a smile. Young Mistress Gloria had left all of the banquet-goers, including K. Rawls, with a deep impression of her. A gorgeous young lady like her would make a fantastic addition to their Earhart family. Even though the Moraton family wasn't a family with a long history, as the Chamber of Commerce became more influential in Chaos City, the Moraton family was quickly becoming more and more renowned. Even though they were still inferior to the Buffett family, they could already be considered to be quite a prosperous aristocratic family. Ryan's eyes lit up as he looked at Carols with an expectant gaze. "I'll go the Moreton family with a marriage proposal soon. President Jeffrey and I are old acquaintances, and the Moreton family has always wanted to expand their business empire to the Roth Empire. I'm sure he'll make the right decision." Carols patted Ryan's shoulder with a smile. "Nonsense. The system would never do something like stealing wine. All I did was borrow some soil from the Domaine de la Romanée-Conti for research purposes, then set up a winery on Francis Island with the exact same minerals and elements contained in that soil sample. After that, the system crossbred the Pinot Noir grapes with the grapes of this world, and selected only the largest and most supple grapes as part of the Pinot Noir No. 2 species. Only the top 5% of those grapes was selected to brew this wine. The brewing process was refined, shortening the brewing time required while also improving the wine's quality. Even though the wine has only been stored in the cellar for a short time, its flavor and texture completely surpass those of the wine from the Domaine de la Romanée-Conti. Furthermore, as long as it's stored properly, the wine can be kept in a cellar for over 300 years. The system was enraged and also more than a little smug. "Have you no shame? You would even stoop so low as to steal soil? Soil created from such methods has no soul." Mag rolled his eyes, but his eyes were shimmering as he looked at the red wine in his glass. Domaine de la Romanée-Conti was the best winery in France, and arguably one of the best in the world. It had a long history spanning several centuries, and it only produced 6,000 bottles of wine per year on average. On the market, there was always an extremely high demand for their wine despite their astronomical prices. In his past life, even Mag was only able to get his hands on 1 or 2 bottles of this wine per year, and one would be taken by his father. As such, he was very familiar with this type of vastly renowned red wine of exceptional quality. Wait! Mag was just about to taste this wine that was apparently similar to Domaine de la Romanée-Conti's wine when the system suddenly stopped him. Mag stopped what he was doing with a confused look on his face. "This red wine can only be used as an ingredient for cooking black pepper steak, and is not to be consumed on its own nor directly sold," the system warned. Mag put down his glass, and asked, "System, how much money are you going to sell this wine for as an ingredient? With this barrel of wine, you'll be able to make 1,000 portions of steak, amounting to a total price of 100,000 copper coins," the system quickly replied. "All right, then you can deduct the 100,000 copper coins right away." "I'll pay for this wine by the barrel from now on," Mag quickly replied. "You're not going to barter this time?" the system asked. "Nope," Mag confirmed. Ding! The transaction was successful, 100,000 copper coins have been deducted. The system's joyful voice sounded. "All right, that's the deal done, this barrel of wine belongs to me now." A smile appeared on Mag's face as he raised his glass again. Just from the aroma alone, he could tell that the system wasn't exaggerating when it proclaimed that this wine was superior to Domaine de la Romanée-Conti's wine. Paying just 100,000 copper coins for such a large barrel of wine of this exceptional caliber was a huge bargain. In his past life, bottles of dated Domaine de la Romanée-Conti wines would start at $100,000 during auctions. If there were avid drinkers present at those auctions, there was almost no upper limit to how high the bids could reach. The system's enraged voice sounded. "You've committed a severe breach of the rules. Your actions will incur. Don't worry, I won't sell any of this wine. I won't profit from it aside from using it in my cooking." Mag pursed his lips as he cut the system off before taking a sip of wine. He first detected the mellow flavor of strawberries, followed by a strong earthy undertone. The texture was very full of body and complexity, yet it wasn't sharp nor overwhelming in the slightest as it glided over his tongue and down his throat. Instead, it was very gentle and harmonious, sweet yet rich. Even after swallowing the wine, its fragrant aftertaste lingered in his mouth for a long time. Mag had tasted many types of exceptional wine in the past, including the likes of Domaine de la Romanée-Conti, Chateau Petrus, Chateau Lafite Rothschild. But in comparison, none of those extremely renowned wines of exceptional quality and astronomical prices could compare with the glass of wine he was holding. The aroma of roses intertwined with the scents of other fruits, creating an indistinct yet irresistible flavor. The texture of the Pinot Noir grapes was still clearly detectable, but it was interspersed with another unique aroma. It was exactly this aroma that set this wine apart from its Domaine de la Romanée-Conti counterpart, transforming it into something completely different. Perhaps it was due to the alcohol content in the wine, but Mag was feeling a hint of heat rise up within his body after swallowing the mouthful of wine. He felt as if he were situated within a winery, with an abundance of large, supple black grapes hanging on the vines around him. Off to the side, there was a cellar emanating the faint aroma of wine, and there was a series of oak wood barrels filled with red wine stacked on top of each other, silently waiting for someone to sample their contents. This is an exceptional wine. Mag only opened his eyes again after a long while, and he stared at the glass of wine in his hand with an incredulous expression. In terms of texture and flavor, this wine had indeed completely surpassed Domaine de la Romanée-Conti wine. It was just that it was slightly lacking in body, which was a consequence of its relatively short period of storage in the cellar. However, its other outstanding qualities more than made up for this slight flaw. Mag put down his glass, and murmured to himself, "It really does feel like a waste to use such fantastic wine to cook steak. If this wine were to gain sufficient fame, it would definitely sell for a higher price than Domaine de la Romanée-Conti wine at auctions." If someone in his past life were to proclaim that they were going to use Domaine de la Romanée-Conti wine to cook steak, they would most likely get beaten to death by all of the avid wine enthusiasts in the world. Using the best ingredients to cook the best food is the most basic benchmark a god of cookery should strive for. You have to rectify your pettiness, only then will you have the chance to become a true god of cookery. The system's vehement voice sounded. "Then how about you give me a 1 copper coin discount for each barrel of wine?" "No way. A discount of 1 copper coin is one too many," the system refused sternly. "You sure aren't petty at all." Mag pursed his lips. He pulled out 3 portions of steak from the fridge and began cooking. The steaks also came from iron-hide bulls, and Mag could tell that the steak had been procured from the same batch of cows that had supplied the ribeye beef for the kebabs. This reduced the wastage of ingredients, and would also ensure that the quality of the beef was even better than that of the beef used during the banquet. 3 portions of steak were quickly cooked, and Mag plated them in an expert manner. Black pepper sauce was then poured over the steaks, while vibrant secondary ingredients embellished the dishes, making the steaks appear even more appealing. "That smells so good." Babla gulped involuntarily as she turned toward the kitchen. The delectable aroma of steak was wafting out of the kitchen. This was a more mellow scent in contrast with the scorching stimulative aroma of the roast beef kebabs. However, it smelled no less delicious, and the faint accompanying aroma of wine threatened to intoxicate her before the dish had even reached the table. "No. I can't make it look like I really want to eat it. I have to be reserved and graceful like a princess should be." Babla thought to herself as she wrenched her gaze away from the kitchen, but her stomach betrayed her as it began to growl like a hungry beast. She had just fainted from hunger, and even though she had been slightly reinvigorated by the sugar water, waves of feebleness and desire were washing over her uncontrollably as she caught a whiff of the steak's rich aroma. She wanted nothing more than to stuff a massive piece of beef into her rumbling stomach. "Hey? Is someone's stomach growling?" Amy looked around with a confused expression. "It's the cat." Babla immediately pointed her finger at Ugly Duckling. "Ugly Duckling, didn't you have a lot to eat tonight already? Why is your stomach grumbling again? This won't do. You'll get so fat that you'll become a ball." Amy looked down at Ugly Duckling with a stern expression. "Meow." Ugly Duckling looked up at Amy with a pitiable expression as it tried to explain itself. "There's no need to explain, run 10 laps around the restaurant first." Amy placed Ugly Duckling down onto the ground with a stern look. Meow. Ugly Duckling aimed a resentful glance at Babla before reluctantly jogging around the restaurant. Babla looked up at the crystal chandelier and heaved a faint sigh of relief. Her dignity as a princess had been preserved. Gruel, Babla's stomach began to growl again, her expression changed slightly as she took a sip of water from her glass, trying her best to make it appear as if she were oblivious to the incessant rumbling noise. Hey! Amy began to look around again with a curious expression. All right, the black pepper steaks are done. Mag carried 3 portions of steak out of the kitchen, placing one each in front of Babla and Amy. He then took off his apron and sat down with the final portion of steak on the table in front of him. He hadn't had a chance to taste the steak yet. Wow! It smells so good! And it looks really pretty as well. Amy's eyes lit up as she was immediately drawn to the steak before her. Babla heaved a faint sigh of relief, but her gaze was also quickly attracted to her steak. The steaks had been pan-seared to a golden brown color. Each portion was around the size of a human hand, and there were thin long lines running along the surface of the steaks, glistening with droplets of oil. The thick sauce was emanating a unique aroma, making one involuntarily salivate. The aroma of the beef was intermingled with the fragrance of the red wine as it wafted through the air, entrancing and intoxicating. Compared to the rather dark color of the steak, the secondary ingredients positioned beside the steaks were very bright and vibrant in color. There were colorful peppers, as well as a green vegetable that looked like a flower. The combination of the two immediately lit up the Celadon porcelain plate. Will a big chunk of beef like this really taste good? Babla's heart was filled with a mixture of suspicion and anticipation. However, she didn't know how she was supposed to eat this large steak. Grabbing it and taking bites straight out of the beef was for Neanderthals, yet using chopsticks would make the dining process very inconvenient. As such, she was at a loss for what to do. You know how steaks should be eaten, right? Mag asked. Oh. Of course I do, Babla replied stubbornly, but she still didn't dig in. Instead, she looked at Mag and Amy out of the corner of her eye, trying to figure out how to eat this steak by observing them. Good. Mag nodded, and dragged Amy's plate over to himself before using his knife and fork to slice her steak into bite-sized chunks. So you have to slice it up. Babla's eyes lit up as she turned her gaze toward the knife and fork beside her. She then emulated Mag by picking up her silverware and slicing into her steak. The knife was able to easily tear through the succulent beef, upon which the delectable aroma lurking within the meat instantly blossomed, causing Babla's eyes to light up even further. What? However, Babla immediately stiffened after slicing off a small morsel of beef as she could see bloody red fibers within the steak. BL. Blood. Babla was suddenly struck by a sense of dizziness, and her body swayed as she fell to the side. What's going on with you? Mag hurriedly supported her by laying a hand on her shoulder. He then looked at the pink section at the center of the steak, and a peculiar look appeared on his face as he asked, "You're not scared of blood, are you?" Babla turned her gaze away from the steak. After taking 2 deep breaths, she managed to recompose herself as she shook her head stubbornly. "I'm not scared of blood. I was just suddenly feeling a little ill. Your steak was cooked to medium, so the center looks a little pink, but it's definitely not raw and it won't taste like blood, either. It'll be really good for your body considering you're anemic. If you're really scared of blood, then we can swap steaks," Mag offered as he withdrew his hand. It appeared that she was quite frail, after all. "There's no need for that, I'm not scared of blood." Babla shook her head with a firm expression as she looked down at the steak on her plate. She lifted her fork again, stabbed it into the small piece of beef she had cut off earlier, and then placed it in her mouth with her eyes closed. The dreaded gush of metallic blood never came. Her teeth easily bit through the tender beef, and the rich flavor of wine fused with the juices of the meat spilled into her mouth. Coupled with that special sauce that instantly ignited her taste buds, Babla felt as if there was a tiny fairy dancing on the tip of her tongue, smoothing out her tightly knitted brows. She chewed the steak carefully, only to find that the beef was incredibly tender and supple. Having been soaked in red wine prior to being cooked, none of the rank odor that was normally present in beef could be detected, yet the original flavor of the beef had been perfectly preserved. Only then did the faintly sweet tang of blood spill out from the beef, but it wasn't a gut-wrenching metallic tang. Instead, it was a subtle sweetness that lent even further complexity to the flavor of the steak. Babla felt as if she were sitting in a large bathtub with her entire body submerged in red liquid. The rich aroma of red wine wafted around her, tinged with hints of blood-filled sweetness. It struck her with the urge to moan with pleasure. Wisps of warmth slid down her throat and into her stomach before coursing through her limbs, giving her the same sense of comfort that she derived from actually taking a warm bath. Furthermore, some of this warmth gathered in her chest. She found the fuzzy feeling indescribable, yet it was very comfortable. Babla could clearly sense her feeble body quickly recovering its energy. If that sugar water from earlier had merely been an appetizer soup, then this steak was well and truly the main course. This steak really is just as delicious as the roast beef kebab. Even though the flavor is completely different, it's not inferior to the roast beef kebab at all. After swallowing the mouthful of beef, Babla opened her eyes and stared at the steak before her with amazement in her eyes. The blood-stained fibers that had evoked in her a sense of nausea suddenly didn't appear so repulsive anymore after she had tasted the delicious steak. Instead, they were looking quite alluring. Babla immediately had another piece of steak without any hesitation. The incredible flavor spread in her mouth with reckless abandon, filling her empty body and completely ridding her of that feeble sensation. What an amazing feeling! Eating this dish has the same effect as eating roast beef. Perhaps it's due to those bloody fibers, but I feel like even my blood flow has quickened and been replenished. Also, there's a strange feeling in my chest. Babla sensed the changes taking place within her body, and was completely immersed in bliss as her large steak rapidly shrank in size. Mag shook his head with a smile upon seeing this. Babla's body was always more honest than her mouth. He placed the plate of sliced-up medium-well steak in front of Amy before picking up his silverware as he dug into his own steak. The medium-well steak had been cooked to perfection, the ridges of the grill pan had imprinted straight lines on the beef, giving it a sense of artistry. His knife glided through the steak, and he could clearly feel the sensation of juices spilling out of the supple beef as the rich aroma of red wine wafted toward him. Just for the fact that 100 milliliters of that red wine had been used to marinate this beef, this is most likely the most expensive black pepper steak in this world. Mag looked at the beef on his fork as he heaved an internal sigh. Even he had never used Domaine de la Romani Conti wine to cook steak before. As the steak entered his mouth, the first flavor he detected was the black pepper, and his taste buds danced with elation in response. The other condiments in the sauce had made the flavor of the black pepper much more mellow, leaving only a pleasantly numb sensation in his mouth. It was like the perfect catalyst facilitating a better fusion between the beef and the red wine. The texture of the beef was very tender, and as the juices of the meat itself spilled out with the red wine, the flavor was simply indescribably exquisite. What an amazing flavor! This is truly top-of-the-range steak. Mag's eyes had completely lit up. He had tasted many outstanding cuts of steak in his past life, but none of those could compare with this portion of steak. 1,500 copper coins is not too high a price for this, is it? Mag thought to himself. The ingredient cost per portion of steak amounted to 300 copper coins, but Mag felt that it was still too cheap even if he were to set the price at 5,000 copper coins. There was no way that anyone could source such exceptional red wine from anywhere, and the flavor of the steak was also completely peerless. Even though the flavor of red wine was quite strong in the dish, Mag had already confirmed with the system that the majority of the alcohol content had already evaporated. Furthermore, condiments like black pepper didn't have any special effect on children, though it did have a certain effect on women and developing young girls. As for any effects that it could have on men, the system's response was slightly ambiguous, yet it guaranteed that there would be no negative implications involved. The restaurant was very quiet, with only the occasional clink of silverware on a plate, and the words of praise that the three of them expressed toward their stakes. Meow Ugly Duckling finished running its 10 laps and sat down at Amy's feet, looking up at her with an expectant gaze. All right, seeing as you finished the 10 laps, I'll give you a small piece of beef. Amy looked down before picking up a piece of beef and passing it to Ugly Duckling. Ugly Duckling's eyes lit up as it laid its 2 front paws on Amy's foot and accepted the piece of beef with glee. It chewed on the beef with a blissful expression, clearly thoroughly enjoying the treat. Meow, 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 meow. However, right after Ugly Duckling swallowed the beef, its body began to sway as it rapidly ran circles around the table. Its body had almost transformed into a blur with the speed of its movement, and it was as if it had suddenly gone insane. Father, what's wrong with Ugly Duckling? Amy stared at Ugly Duckling with a look of bewilderment on her face. It's probably sick. Mag raised an eyebrow in response. He was also quite surprised by this peculiar development. Thud. Ugly Duckling crashed headfirst into a table leg before lying spread-eagled on its back, having already fallen asleep. System, didn't you say there's barely any alcohol content left? Why is the kitten drunk? Mag looked at the sleeping Ugly Duckling with a confused expression on his face. General, this is the report we just received from Chaos City. In an encampment within a valley, a black-robed man quickly walked into the centermost tent, and passed a long wooden bamboo tube to Seuss. Seuss opened the seal on the bamboo tube and pulled out the letter within. As he read through the contents of the letter, his brows gradually began to furrow. The black-robed figures in the tent immediately began getting nervous as they focused their eyes on Seuss. A ball of black flames abruptly ignited, incinerating the letter and bamboo tube in Seuss's hands as he instructed, "Pack your things, we have to go to Chaos City immediately." At the border of the Roth Empire, in army barracks. Sean looked at the map on the wall, and asked, "Have the cheetahs discovered anything of late?" "Your Highness, we did receive some news, but they were all determined to be false in the end. We still haven't discovered Alex's whereabouts," Quine said in a low voice. "However, the cheetah responsible for keeping an eye on Lewis, Bertley, hasn't delivered his monthly report yet. I've already deployed people to investigate the situation, but the reason is unclear for now." Lewis. Sean's brows furrowed as he recalled the saber-wielding knight who seemed to be constantly by Alex's side. He was renowned for battling like a madman with no regard for his own safety, and was extremely loyal to Alex. It's unlikely that he was the one who saved Alex, but Bertley's disappearance does need to be thoroughly investigated. Situations like this haven't commonly arisen in the past few years, Sean said. Yes. Quine nodded in response. Did you receive any news on what Josh is doing? Sean asked. According to a secret report from our spy in the Azuras, they don't appear to have found Alex, either. Seuss should currently be on his way to Chaos City. This information was delivered to me 10 days ago, Quine replied. Interesting. Alex was once able to make the entire continent aware of his location, yet now, he's able to make the entire continent oblivious to his whereabouts. This Alex really can't be underestimated. Sean chuckled coldly. Quine bowed his head even lower and didn't reply. Sean's smile receded as he turned to Quine, and remarked, I'm going back to Rodu in 15 days for His Majesty's birthday celebration. Have you gathered everyone I asked for? Everything has been prepared. I've already deployed people to keep an eye on the medicine masters who are refining the Longleaf pills. Quine hesitated momentarily before continuing, Your Highness, I have a question. Go on, Sean prompted calmly. Quine looked at Sean with a perplexed expression, and said, Your Highness, your influence within the military is currently unmatched, and the 7 armies in the northern region all answer to your commands. Even if His Majesty were to abdicate and pass the crown to the second prince, there's no way that the Magus Tower will be able to stand up against the 7 armies of North, so you'll be able to easily defeat the second prince. Regardless of whether His Majesty passes down the crown to you or not, you'll still become the king, so why would you refine long-life pills for the king at a time like this? Also, even if insolence. Is this something for you to discuss? Sean's expression immediately darkened. Please forgive me, Your Highness. Quine fell to his knees, and didn't dare to raise his head. Remember this, as long as the king still sits on that throne, he will continue to be the king of the Roth Empire. No one can take the crown away from him, and anyone who's tried in the past is dead. Sean looked at Quine with a derisive sneer, and said, also, as long as the king lives on, he will remain the most influential figure in the military. Even among the 7 armies of the north, at least 3 of them would turn against me should I stage a rebellion. Do you still think I have any chance of victory now? Quine bowed his head even lower, his forehead drenched with cold sweat. You may go now. If you find any more information about Alex, make sure to report it to me at the first possible opportunity. Sean dismissed Quine with a wave of his hand. Yes. Quine rose to his feet, and quickly disappeared from the barracks. When are you going to die, old man? Everyone's waiting for you, Sean murmured to himself as he stood in front of the map of the Roth Empire. His finger slowly traced along the northern region down the map before landing heavily on the word Rodu. Josh and those old bastards in the Magus Tower are also waiting. However, ever since Krasil left the Magus Tower, the pressure on my side had been alleviated significantly. If he could side with me. Perhaps it's time I sent someone to Chaos City. Beef contained an abundance of iron, and these micronutrients were extremely well preserved within a medium steak. As such, after eating a portion of steak, Babla's complexion had already returned to normal, and there was even a hint of redness on her cheeks, giving her a very healthy and radiant look instead of the previous sickly pallor. Is that it? Babla looked at the empty plate before her, and was still craving more. Her resentment for half-cooked beef had been completely dispelled, and she had even developed a decent level of immunity to the taste of blood. She felt that even if she were to see blood again next time, her reaction would be far less pronounced. Mag just so happened to also put down his silverware. He turned to Babla as he asked, "Are you full?" "I am." Babla nodded in response. The steak had evoked within her an incomparable sense of satiety, and also provided her with a vast amount of energy. She looked at Mag, and hesitated momentarily before saying, "It was very delicious." "Then hurry up and go to bed. You have to get up for work tomorrow," Mag said with a smile. It was rather difficult to win praise from this princess. "All right." Babla stood up and went straight upstairs. "Ugly duckling, wake up! Wake up!" Amy squatted down and began to slap Ugly Duckling's fat cheeks, alternating with her right and left hands. However, Ugly Duckling didn't show any reaction. Mag placed the plates and silverware in the dishwater before emerging from the kitchen, and said to Amy, "It might be drunk. Let it wake up on its own tomorrow." "All right. I'll take it upstairs to bed, then." Amy heaved a resigned sigh before dragging Ugly Duckling behind her by the tail and walking up the stairs. Mag looked on as Ugly Duckling's face slid along the smooth floor before being dragged up the stairs with its head thudding into each and every step, and he couldn't help but smile as he shook his head. Moderation when it came to alcohol consumption applied to both cats and humans. Otherwise, the situation would always end badly. After taking a bath, Amy placed Ugly Duckling on a nearby chair with a disdainful expression. Tucking Amy into bed, Mag soon lay down on his own bed before opening the ice cream cake experience bag, and entering the test field for the god of cookery. The ice cream cake was an extension of this ice cream range. In this world, the concept of birthday existed, but it was up to him to instill within everyone the habit to eat birthday cakes. Mag felt like that would be a great business opportunity, and there was no better way to promote the concept of a birthday cake than to offer one to the king of the Roth Empire on his birthday. Mag suddenly discovered that he was thinking more and more like a businessman. Soon after Amy and Mag both fell asleep, orange light suddenly appeared over Ugly Duckling's body as it lay on the chair. Its body slowly expanded and became round as if it were a balloon that was being inflated. All of a sudden, a pair of white wings sprouted from its back. It gently flapped those wings, upon which it rose into the air like a big round mandarin and flew in a circle around the room. Ugly Duckling, which still had its eyes closed, suddenly sneezed. It then began to rapidly deflate like a punctured balloon, whizzing wildly around the room before diving headfirst into Amy's little bed. Meow! Ugly Duckling opened its eyes with difficulty. It caught sight of Amy's face before closing its eyes again and settling into a more comfortable position to sleep in. Principal Heidel, I'm really sorry to disturb you so late at night. In front of an old yard door with ivy vines climbing all over it, Sheer was looking at Heidel with an apologetic expression on her face. Not at all, young mistress. You've always been supporting our research, so it's no issue if you request to meet with me at any time of the day. Heidel hurriedly waved his hands in response. He looked at Sheer with a hesitant expression, and asked, Young Mistress Sheer, could it be that you are asking me these questions because someone has already developed a steam engine? I'm not particularly sure of that myself yet, but I'll notify you as soon as I can confirm things on my end, Sheer replied with a smile. That would be great. If someone really has managed to develop a steam engine, that would be an occasion that's very much worthy of celebration. Heidel nodded with a smile. Sheer looked at Heidel with a perplexed expression, and asked, Principal, you've expended years of time and effort on this project, wouldn't you feel sad if someone else developed a steam engine before you? Why would I be sad? I've indeed worked on this project for many years, but I've never made any significant breakthroughs. Mr. Mag provided us with some suggestions recently, but we're still very far away from creating a finished product. If someone can make a steam engine now, then this is a major breakthrough and that's very much worthy of celebration. Heidel shook his head with a smile. A smile also appeared on Sheer's face as she nodded, and said, Principal Heidel, if you require any funding in your future projects, you can come and find me. Then I'll thank you in advance, young Mistress Sheer. Heidel nodded with a smile. I'll be taking my leave now. Sheer got onto her horse-drawn carriage and departed. If someone really has produced a steam engine, then that means the direction I've been working toward in these past years was correct. I wonder who has managed to develop a steam engine, though. Once young Mistress Sheer reveals that information to me, I'll be sure to pay the inventor a visit and discuss some ideas, Heidel murmured to himself as he stood in front of the door. Sheer was also murmuring to herself in her carriage. He is a truly dedicated researcher. I hope Mr. Mag isn't simply taking the fruit of their research to try and swindle me. Within Moreton Manor, in a study that was filled with shelves full of account books, Geoffrey was getting changed with the assistance of the family butler. Cyril stood beside him with a vehement look on his face, and said, Father, that accursed Gloria completely sided with Sheer during the banquet tonight, and swept the dignity of our Moreton family to the ground. She's also making an extremely selfish donation without any regard for our family's estate. Also, there's definitely something going on between her and Mag. I don't think she's suitable to continue to act as a candidate to the family heirloom and the owner of Blue Suede Textile Shop. Slap! A crisp slap rang out within the room. The butler quickly exited the room with Geoffrey's clothes in his hands and closed the door behind him as he left. Geoffrey withdrew his trembling hand and glared coldly at Cyril, who had a red handprint on his face, and had only prevented himself from falling by leaning on the desk for support. Do you know why I hit you? Cyril had a hand clasped over his face, and was rather dizzy. Geoffrey rarely ever struck him, and listening to Geoffrey's voice now, Cyril felt as if he had been plunged into a glacial pit. The one who swept our family's dignity to the ground at the banquet tonight wasn't Gloria, it was you, you useless bastard. Instead, she was the one who recovered some scraps of dignity for us so that at the very least, people wouldn't think that our Moreton family is a family of fools. How dare you slander her like this as her uncle? I think you're the one who doesn't deserve to be a candidate to inherit the family heirloom. Geoffrey said in a cold voice. Cyril's expression changed drastically upon hearing this, and he immediately fell to his knees. He threw his arms around Geoffrey's leg, and sobbed, "Father, I'm sorry. I've realized my mistakes, I truly have this time. Piss off." Geoffrey kicked Cyril to the ground, and continued, "I began my first foray into entrepreneurship at 12 years old, and I've had to be extremely careful with my words and actions along the way in order to accumulate such a massive estate. You don't ever think about striving for improvements, and all you do is wallow in complacency and cause trouble for me and the family no matter what you do. If I leave the family in your hands, you'll lead it to ruin sooner or later." Cyril's face paled as he rolled up onto his knees again. He didn't dare to throw his arms around Geoffrey's leg again, so he slapped himself over and over again as he sobbed, "Father, I'll change. I'll definitely change. From this day forth, I won't cause any more trouble for you, and I'll strive to improve myself. I know the errors in my ways." Geoffrey looked at Cyril with a cold expression. Only after Cyril had slapped himself to the extent that his face was beginning to swell up did he continue, "Remember what happened today. If I hear you doing anything to put the Moreton family's name into disrepute again, I'm going to kick you out of Moreton Manor." "Yes. Yes." Cyril hurriedly nodded as he heaved an internal sigh of relief. "Don't think that you're not off the hook quite now." A cold smile appeared on Geoffrey's face as he pulled out a thick accounts book from one of the nearby shelves, and slammed it onto the table as he said, "These are the account books of the businesses you've been handling in the past few years. You thought that you could swindle me by manipulating the figures in these account books, yet you failed to realize the accountant always keeps 2 copies of the same account book. I'm not going to punish you for all of the money you've taken from those businesses in these past few years, but from this day forth, I'm taking back all of those businesses from you. Carrie's Forge has been making neither profits nor losses in the past 2 days, I'm giving you 20 days from now to make it a profitable business. If the money on the Forge's account exceeds that of the Blue Suede Textile Shop, then I'll return all of these businesses to you. If the Blue Suede Textiles Shop has more money on their account by the end of the 20 days, then I'll give all of these businesses to Gloria." Cyril's expression was quite strained, but he still gritted his teeth and nodded at the sight of Geoffrey's implacable look. "Yes. Don't think about playing any dirty little tricks. If you can't even beat a woman fair and square, then you're not worthy of inheriting the Moreton family." Geoffrey looked at Cyril with a warning in his eyes before exiting the room. Gasp! Cyril slowly rose to his feet with a hand over his cheek. He laid both hands on the desk and looked at the accounts book with a twisted expression as he murmured to himself, "You've never trusted me, old man. Even that little brat, Sheer, has already inherited the Buffett family, yet you're making me fight over this position with a little girl." "Princess! Princess!" Pyrrhus rushed into a spacious cave, and caught sight of Irina squatting down in front of the Tree of Life, seemingly in the process of starting a fire. Pyrrhus' footsteps faltered as she sniffed the air, and she asked, "Princess, are you burning something?" Irina was holding a tree branch with a serious look on her face as she replied, "I'm making roast chicken. Alex loved my roast chicken in the past. When I find them, I'm going to cook roast chicken for them every single day." Pyrrhus looked at the roast chicken on the branch, which had almost been roasted into an unrecognizable chunk of charcoal already. With a complex look on her face, she asked, "Are you really going to do that?" "Of course. I feel like little Amy would also love my roast chicken." Irina nodded firmly. "Have you tasted your own roast chicken yourself?" Pyrrhus asked. "No, I don't like roast chicken, so I always bought something else for myself when I cooked this for Alex." Irina shook her head as she looked at the chicken roasting over the fire. She then turned to Pyrrhus, and a smile gradually appeared on her face. A shiver ran down Pyrrhus' spine upon seeing Irina's dangerous smile, and she hurriedly said, "Princess, I've already had dinner tonight." "That's all right, you can eat this as a late-night snack. You won't find such delicious roast chicken anywhere else." Irina looked at Firas with a smile as she thrust her charcoal chicken toward Firas. I really can't. I'm still very full now, and eating at night will result in rapid weight gain. Firas shook her head with a resolute expression, and unconsciously took a couple of steps backward. She had no idea how anyone could eat this chicken, which had essentially been transformed into a chunk of charcoal, and she was even more perplexed how Alex could possibly find this delicious. Before Firas could say anything else, a chicken drumstick had already been stuffed into her mouth. Firas felt as if she had taken a bite out of an extremely heavily salted chunk of charcoal. Even though it was just a single bite, Firas felt as if she were already about to pass out. This was not something that any elf could stomach. Is it really that bad? Alex really liked it back then. Irina looked at Firas, who was cupping dew water in her hands and desperately rinsing out her mouth, with a suspicious look on her face. She hesitated momentarily before taking a bite out of the other chicken drumstick. Firas stood by and looked on in silence. Urg! How is this even edible? Irina threw the entire chicken drumstick out of the cave before also rinsing out her mouth with some dew water. She looked at the roast chicken in her hand with a complex expression, and said, I didn't think that Alex would have such strange taste. Back when I fell in love with him, I thought he was a pure and innocent young man. I feel like Master Alex most likely fell in love with your purity and innocence. Firas sighed. Why do you have your hand over your heart when you say that? Irina was looking at Firas with a confused expression. That's... Oh, right. Princess, I'm here to report a very important piece of information to you. Firas's eyes lit up, and her voice rose by a few octaves as well. Has SAHDR reported back? Irina's eyes also lit up. Firas made her way closer to Irina, and whispered, No, this is information regarding the latest batch of elves who have been captured. They're going to reach the border of the Wind Forest in 3 days. Irina's expression immediately cooled as she clenched her fists, and said, That old witch, Irina, still isn't willing to give up. If they don't want to come back, what right does she have to capture them? And to think that she's using demons and orcs to do her bidding. Firas looked at Irina with a concerned expression, and asked, Princess, are you going to strike this time? I've already done the wrong thing on so many occasions in the past, how can I just continue to stand by and watch? I wouldn't be Irina if I did that. Irina chuckled coldly. But you've only just recovered, and Her Majesty approved the plan to return elves to the Wind Forest. If you strike, Helena will most likely join forces with the major families and turn on you. In that case, your situation will be even more difficult than it is now, Firas said in an urgent tone. Ever since what happened 5 years ago, this problem has ceased to be a problem for me. Irina shrugged nonchalantly before flicking Firas' forehead with a smile, and said, I'm hungry, get me something good to eat. Ow! That hurt. Firas rubbed her forehead as she aimed a resentful glance at Irina. She then made her way out of the cave to find some food for Irina. She knew now that no one could change the princess's mind after she had made her decision on something. In the past, she felt that Alex was perhaps capable of doing this, but it appeared that this was an impossible task, after all. Those bastards are wreaking havoc and abusing my brethren again. Looks like they've forgotten about my existence already. Irina chuckled coldly. However, her gaze then fell on the wild chicken that hadn't been roasted yet off to the side, and a conflicted look appeared on her face as she murmured to herself, Does Alex really like my roast chicken? Will little Amy like it? Perhaps it's time I made some improvements for them. The next morning, the alarm clock had only just begun ringing when it was turned off by Mag. He sat up and stretched lazily to loosen out his body. Even though he had been making ice cream cake in the test field for the god of cookery for almost the entire night, he was feeling quite well rested and energetic. Mag turned and caught sight of Ugly Duckling, which was barely hanging onto the sheets on Amy's little bed with the rest of its body hanging precariously off the bed, and he prepared to give it a hand. However, right at this moment, Amy rolled over in her sleep, and her tender little foot struck Ugly Duckling square in the face. Meow! Ugly Duckling let loose a cry of despair as it fell off the small bed, rolling a few times before coming to a halt with a resentful look on its face. Mag shook his head with a smile. The same thing happened almost every single morning, so he couldn't be bothered to do anything about it. He got up and changed his clothes, then brushed his teeth, and went downstairs to prepare ingredients for the breakfast service. This morning, Mag was planning to release his steak as a new dish for the restaurant. However, he wasn't planning on immediately releasing his ice cream cake. Instead, he was going to save it as a trump card on his trip to Rodu. The ice cream cake was, as its name suggested, a perfect blend between ice cream and chocolate, combining the cool and refreshing taste of chocolate with the smooth texture of cake, so there was no reason why it wouldn't be popular. While preparing ingredients, Mag thought about his upcoming meeting with Sheer. That was going to be a life-changing conference. The restaurant was well and truly up and running, yet compared to the staggering prices of the strength points, his daily income was still not enough. That was why he was taking the risk with this steam engine. However, aside from profiting financially from using the steam engine, Mag also had another important consideration, and that was how he was going to tie himself together with the Buffett family and Chaos City. He didn't want the tragedy of 3 years ago to repeat itself, so he had to do things differently compared to Alex. He had to gather powerful allies in order to better protect himself from his enemies. Right at this moment, Amy's voice suddenly cut off Mag's train of thought. "Father, look! Ugly Duckling's grown a pair of little wings." It grew wings. A surprised expression appeared on Mag's face as he turned to Amy, who was standing at the kitchen's entrance with Ugly Duckling in her arms. Amy pointed to Ugly Duckling's back, and said, "Look! Look! The 2 patches of fur on its back here have turned white, it's like a pair of little wings." Mag put down the knife in his hand and made his way over to Amy. Ugly Duckling didn't appear to be fully awake yet, and it snuggled up in Amy's arms before closing its eyes with a content expression on its face. Sure enough, 2 small patches of white had appeared on its orange fur, and upon closer inspection, they really did appear to be like a pair of little white wings. The patches were completely symmetrical on either side, and made for a very adorable sight. "They do indeed look like little wings." Mag nodded in response. The little white wings that had suddenly appeared on Ugly Duckling's back really were rather strange. Could it be that its body had evolved after eating the wine-infused steak the night prior? "I knew it wasn't a kitten. It's an ugly duckling, and when it grows up, it's going to become a beautiful white swan." Amy looked down at Ugly Duckling with elation in her eyes as she licked her lips, and said, "When that time comes, I'm going to, meow." All of the fur on Ugly Duckling's body suddenly stood on ends as it looked up at Amy with a horrified expression, and shook its head vigorously. "It's all right, you're still small, I'll wait until you grow bigger." Amy put on a smile and gently stroked Ugly Duckling's little head. Meow! Ugly Duckling closed its eyes in a satisfied manner, and settled in Amy's arms again. Could this thing be a mutated beast of some sort? Mag stroked the 2 little wings on Ugly Duckling's back, only to find that the white fur was clearly slightly harder than the surrounding orange fur. Furthermore, the fur was stacked in layers like feathers on a bird's wings, but there were no wings growing under the tufts of white fur. "Father, will Ugly Duckling be able to fly when it grows up?" Amy looked up at Mag with an expectant gaze in her eyes. "If it really is an ugly duckling, then it should be able to fly when it grows up." Mag nodded with a smile. Ugly Duckling had originally hatched from an egg, and it appeared to have grown a pair of wings, so even Mag was rather unsure just what it was going to become after it grew up. However, one thing was certain, they had picked up a treasure. Yay! Roast goose is very delicious, but I can consider letting it grow up so I can ride on it into the sky. Amy's eyes lit up after making what appeared to have been an extremely difficult decision. "That's a good idea." Mag nodded with a smile, and then said, "Go and brush your teeth, Amy. I'll braid your hair later. All right. Amy nodded obediently before carrying Ugly Duckling upstairs. Have you heard about what Boss Mag did during the mid-year banquet held by the Chamber of Commerce last time? He competed in a cooking contest with head chef Beat from Dukas restaurant. In the long line outside the restaurant, Harrison wore a mysterious look on his face. While out drinking with a friend the night prior, he had heard some very interesting news. What happened? Who won? All of the customers were immediately intrigued upon hearing that. After all, head chef Beat was an extremely renowned chef in Chaos City. Off to the side, a man wearing a set of lavish long robes smiled, and said, "Do you even need to ask? Of course Boss Mag won. I was there at the banquet last night, and during the cooking contest, Boss Mag won over the entire judging panel with his black pepper steak. The city lord, the president of the Chamber of Commerce, and young Mistress Shear were all judges on the panel, and Boss Mag secured a unanimous votes victory. So Boss Mag beat head chef Beat." Elated, the customers outside the restaurant immediately erupted in an uproar. They felt as if something that they loved was finally gaining widespread acknowledgement. However, at the same time, they were slightly concerned that if too many people knew about Mag's cooking, his dishes would no longer solely belong to their exclusive customer group. This was quite an indescribable and conflicting feeling. Steak? I don't recall that being a dish on Mamie Restaurant's menu. Could it be that Boss Mag is going to release another new dish? It must be an extremely delicious dish to have secured the approval of both the city lord and the president of the Chamber of Commerce. I wonder if Boss Mag is going to release it today. All of the customers instantly became very excited. Not too long ago, the new roast beef kebabs had been a massive hit. Everyone was wondering what kind of surprises this new beef dish would bring to everyone. As soon as Yabimiya walked in through the restaurant doors, she rushed over to Mag with a bewildered expression, and asked, "Boss, I heard you beat head chef Beat last night. Is that true?" The head chef of Dukas restaurant, Beat, was widely acknowledged as the most exceptional chef in Chaos City. He used to be her idol, yet he had been beaten in a cooking contest by Mag. In Yabimiya's heart, Mag had exceeded head chef Beat long ago, but she was still unable to contain her astonishment upon hearing such news. Sally was also looking at Mag with a surprised expression on her face. She was Mamie Restaurant's first ever customer, so she was naturally aware just how much effort Mag had put in to take the restaurant from an obscure establishment to one that was renowned throughout the entire city. "That's right, Father cooked a super delicious steak last night, and then he won." Before Mag had a chance to reply, Amy nodded her little head, and said, "If you don't believe me, you can ask Big Sister Babla, she also tasted the steak last night. The steak was very delicious." Babla nodded in confirmation. It wasn't an easy task for her to compliment others, but it wasn't too much to ask her to give her honest opinion. "Today, our restaurant is going to release a new dish, the black pepper steak. If you want to try it, I can make it for all of you for breakfast today," Mag offered with a smile. The act of spreading joy was a very joyful endeavor in itself. During the cooking contest the night before, not only had he beaten Beat and won a storefront, he had also attracted a group of new customers with enormous spending abilities. This was undoubtedly extremely beneficial to the restaurant's development. "I want to eat the steak, then I want 2 tofu puddings." Amy was the first to raise her hand. "I'll also get a steak. I feel like it's going to be very delicious." Yabimiya was the second to raise her hand. Sally nodded, and said, "I'll get a steak as well." "I'll get a medium steak," Babla said rather hesitantly. "Steak and tofu pudding, that's an interesting combination." Mag chuckled as he made his way toward the kitchen. At the same time, a long line had also gathered outside the blue suede clothing store. A noblewoman in the line complained, "When is this blue suede going to open? I've been waiting here for almost half an hour." A long line had already gathered in front of the blue suede clothing store, and all of the people in the line were well-dressed noblewomen. All of them were dressed in a very lavish manner as if they were attending some kind of event, and their attire drew a lot of attention to themselves. These noble women were greeting each other amicably, yet the atmosphere was clearly not as harmonious as they were trying to make it seem. Everyone had heard that there was only going to be a limited edition release of the dress that young Mistress Gloria had worn the night before, and only one dress of each color was going to be made, which meant that there was only going to be around a dozen of these dresses made in total. At present, there were already over 20 people in the line, and it was only continuing to lengthen. As such, the people in the rear half of the line were unsure of whether they would be able to secure the dress of their desires. Thus, everyone present was competing with everyone else. A horse-drawn carriage slowly approached from the distance, and Gloria disembarked in an elegant manner. She faltered slightly at the sight of the noble women gathered in front of blue suede, but she quickly came to her senses again. With an apologetic smile on her face, she said, "My apologies for not preparing a proper welcome, I didn't think everyone would get here so early." "Not at all, young mistress, you're already here very early. It's just that we were too eager, and came here even earlier than you," a noble woman replied with a genuine smile on her face. "Young Mistress Gloria, there are a lot of us lined up here, so would you be able to make a few extra dresses to at least guarantee that all of us can get one?" a noble woman at the back of the line asked. She was wearing a rather tense expression on her face. She had thought that she was already coming quite early, but a long line had already formed by the time she got here. "Thank you for displaying such keen interest in our dresses, but the number of dresses is going to be based solely on the number of colors. If we have stock in a color of your liking, then that's naturally ideal, but if not, our store has 2 other styles of dresses that are also quite nice. All of you are free to try out those dresses as well." Gloria shook her head and refused to make any concessions on this matter. Mamie Restaurant had its own set of rules, which it firmly upheld, which was why it held a special, almost sacred place in its customers' hearts. If she wanted to make Blue Suede a shop that was as successful as Mamie Restaurant, then she had to stand by her own set of rules. Otherwise, these wealthy and picky noble women were going to become a massive headache to deal with. There was one important idea that Gloria had learned from Meg: customers couldn't be mollycoddled. "I see." The noble women were dejected yet also elated upon hearing this. They were disappointed as there was a chance that they wouldn't be able to pick a color they liked, but they were also elated as what Gloria was doing was ensuring that their dresses would be absolutely unique, with no replicas of the same color. Exclusivity was something that they held in the highest regard. "Please come in, everyone. I'll get all of you to pick dresses in the sequence that you lined up in," Gloria said with a smile. She knocked on the door and said something to the employees within the store, following which the tightly shut door was quickly opened, and an employee with slightly visible dark circles around her eyes emerged to welcome the customers. In the kitchen, Mag was frying steaks with a focused expression on his face, and the aroma of beef was wafting out into the rest of the restaurant. Yabimiya inhaled deeply, and her eyes lit up with anticipation, but she wore a slightly concerned look on her face as she said, "It smells so good, but I don't drink alcohol. Am I going to get drunk from eating this steak?" "Ugly Duckling only had a tiny piece last night, and it immediately got drunk," Amy said as she stroked Ugly Duckling's head. "Is it that strong?" Yabimiya's eyes widened. In a conflicted voice, she said, "My alcohol tolerance is probably about the same as Ugly Duckling's. If I get drunk on just a bite of steak, then I won't be able to work later. Is my alcohol tolerance supposed to be really good?" Babla thought to herself in befuddlement. She had eaten an entire steak the night before, but she hadn't felt drunk in the slightest. She could even clearly recall herself going upstairs the night before in a completely conscious state. It shouldn't be too much of an issue. After all, Amy had some, and she's still fine. Sally took a glance at Ugly Duckling, and as her gaze fell on its back, a peculiar look appeared on her face. She asked, "Has it grown a pair of wings?" "I think it has. Could it be, that it's actually going to grow up to become a white swan. Yabimiya inspected Ugly Duckling with a curious expression upon hearing that. This is a magic beast from your world, right? I can't sense any magical power from it, though. Babla was surveying Ugly Duckling with an inquisitive look. Meow. Ugly Duckling was getting a little unsettled by the widespread scrutiny it was receiving, and it didn't dare to move as it squirmed deeper into Amy's arms. This is black pepper steak, have a taste, everyone. Mag made his way out of the kitchen with a platter in his hands, and set down a plate of steak in front of everyone. Wow! It smells and looks really good. Yabimiya stared at the steak before her with amazement in her eyes. The steak and the secondary dishes on the plate complemented each other to perfection, and the rich aroma wafting through the air was making her salivate involuntarily. It was the aroma of beef and red wine, as well as some other type of unique fragrance. This unique fragrance was like a little kitten scratching at one's heart, making one desperately want to find out just what was giving off such a delicious aroma. Sally closed her eyes and inhaled deeply through her nose, upon which her eyes also lit up. This wine smells really unique. Its fragrance is even richer than that of the wine my father brewed using the spring of life. Even for a non-drinker, this is still a very alluring aroma. In this dish, it smells more like a condiment rather than an alcoholic beverage, lending the beef another layer of flavor complexity. After eating the steak last night, I slept really well, and I feel really good today. It seems to be even more effective for my condition than roast beef kebabs. I should take this chance to verify if that's the case, Babla thought to herself as she looked at the steak in front of her. Dig in, everyone, Mag said with a smile. He then dragged Amy's plate over and prepared to slice up her steak again. However, Amy picked up her own knife and fork, and looked at Mag with a serious expression as she said, "Father, I can do it myself. Teacher Luna said that we should strive to do everything ourselves, including eating." Mag looked at Amy's earnest expression, and hesitated momentarily before placing the plate in front of Amy again. He smiled, and said, "All right, but do be careful when using your knife and fork." "I will." Amy nodded with a joyful expression before using her fork to stabilize the steak and carefully cutting into the beef with her knife. Mag sliced off a piece of beef and dipped it in the black pepper sauce before putting it into his mouth, basking in the joyful experience of feeling his taste buds spring to life. Yabimiya and Sally also imitated Mag by slicing off pieces of beef for themselves, and they tasted their first mouthful of steak at almost the exact same moment as Babla did. "This steak is delicious." Sally's eyes immediately lit up. After swallowing her mouthful of beef, she could feel a flow of warmth trickling toward her chest, and an incredulous expression appeared on her face as she exclaimed, "This feeling! Could it be that this steak can enhance chest development? I'm quite small there, but I really do feel a hot sensation in that area." Babla's eyes also lit up. "Rib!" Right at this moment, the sound of tearing fabric rang out. The sound of tearing fabric was very pronounced, just as if something were suddenly bursting its way through a piece of material, and everyone turned to Yabimiya in unison. The button on the chest of her adorable and sexy maid uniform had already come undone, revealing 2 slivers of fair and tender skin. Her clothes tore open again. Mag's eyes lit up slightly upon hearing this. It was quite a pleasant surprise to see Yabimiya carrying such heavy artillery on her small body. Sally and Babla looked at Yabimiya's chest, then down at their own unresponsive chests, and their expressions instantly became rather complex. They were all women, so why was Mia so much more exceptional than them? Ah! Yabimiya looked down at her torn clothes, and a blush immediately appeared on her face as her hand flew to her collar. How does this keep happening? Could it be that I'm really too big? And it feels like it's only getting bigger. Yabimiya was so embarrassed that she was at a loss for words. At the same time, the delicious taste of the steak was still wreaking havoc in her mouth, while the swelling sensation in her chest was becoming more pronounced. "Wow, big sister Mia, your melons are showing!" Amy exclaimed. She then turned to Sally and Babla with a curious look on her face, and asked, "But why don't Big Sister Sally and Big Sister Babla have that?" Ahem. Sally and Babla both cleared their throats in unison, feeling as if Amy had just stabbed them right in the heart. The two of them then continued to dine on their steaks, trying to intensify the swelling sensation in their chests. "That's... You'll know why when you grow up, Amy," Mag said with an awkward expression. This area of education was rather difficult for him to handle. If only her mother were here in situations like this. "Really? All right, then." Amy nodded, and didn't ask any further questions as she continued to eat her steak. Yabimiya turned her body to the side, and quickly buttoned herself up again. The same thing had happened when she had tasted Rugiamo for the first time. However, at the time, she had been too immersed in the delicious flavor to exhibit much of a reaction. On this occasion, her embarrassment quickly subsided in the face of the delicious steak, and she began to focus on her meal again. "This is absolutely amazing. I didn't think that beef could taste this good. The red wine combines perfectly with beef, creating a texture and flavor that's completely different from roast beef kebabs, but it's just as delicious." Yabimiya put down her silverware and turned to Mag with admiration in her eyes. Sally savored the flavor of her steak with her eyes closed before opening her eyes again as she said, "I feel like this sauce is the most extraordinary component of this dish. There's a flavor in it that I've never tasted before, and it makes this steak a lot more unique. Only someone who's constantly immersed in cooking can churn out such delicious dishes one after another," Sally thought to herself as she looked at Mag. "This is a lot more delicious than the beef cooked by even the best chefs in the Moon Nation," Babla thought to herself. "Looks like we'll be able to sell quite a few portions of steak today," Mag said with a satisfied smile. For a chef, there was nothing more pleasing and satisfying than receiving the customer's approval. As soon as the restaurant was open for business, Harrison rushed in, and asked, "Boss Mag, I heard you cooked a steak at the mid-year banquet held by the Chamber of Commerce last night, are you releasing a new dish today?" All of the other customers were also looking at Mag with expectant expressions on their faces. Among them, there were many members of the Chamber of Commerce who had attended the banquet the night before. "That's right, the restaurant is going to release the new dish, black pepper steak, today." Mag nodded with a smile. It appeared that there was no need to further advertise the dish. Harrison's eyes immediately lit up as he said, "All right, then I'll get a black pepper steak today." This black pepper steak received the approval of even the city lord, so I naturally have to taste a portion for myself as well. "We have to support all new dishes released by Boss Mag, I'll get a black pepper steak as well." All of the customers began to state their orders, and many of them ordered portions of steak. "All right, please wait for a moment, everyone." Mag turned toward the kitchen and began to prepare the ordered dishes. Soon, one delicious dish after another was carried out of the kitchen and placed in front of the customers. Not long after that, the aroma of beef intermingled with red wine wafted out of the kitchen, instantly drawing widespread interest from all of the customers. "This is that aroma from last night. But it seems to be even richer and more alluring than it was during the banquet," David exclaimed with elation. He had been dying for a taste of this dish after watching the judges deliver their appraisals the night before, so he had hurried over to Mamie restaurant bright and early in the morning after ascertaining its location. David owned 3 furniture stores in the Aden Square, all of which specialized in high-end furniture. His stores almost completely dominated the high-end furniture market in Chaos City, so he naturally held a very important position in the Chamber of Commerce as well. However, he had never been interested in competing with others for superiority, so he had turned down many offers to become a board member of the Chamber of Commerce. He simply wanted to accumulate wealth without offending anyone, so it was clearly not a good idea for him to get too heavily involved with the Chamber of Commerce. Furthermore, he wanted to have enough time on his hands to visit all kinds of delicious restaurants as he was quite an avid foodie. Back in his younger days, he often had to travel very far to source wood and other materials for his furniture. As such, he had traveled almost the entire continent, and dined everywhere he went, and thus he had a set of strict standards for the food he ate, and mediocre dishes couldn't satisfy him. For such an enthusiastic chowhound, he considered himself extremely fortunate to have been able to witness the cooking contest the night before. He didn't know much about Mag, but as a regular customer of Duca's restaurant, he couldn't be more familiar with Beat's cooking skills definitely stood at the very pinnacle of the gastronomic industry of Chaos City. There was still a gap between him and the top chefs of Rodu, but his dishes were already extremely delicious to David. However, Mag was able to quite literally crush Beat with his steak, and that was more than enough to indicate the disparity between the two of them. David had no doubt that the judging had been completely fair, which was why he had made the effort to get up this early this morning. In this world, delicious cuisine was the only thing that one absolutely couldn't miss out on. To his surprise, even though he had woken up very early, a long line had already formed in front of the restaurant. "Here's your medium-well black pepper steak." Yabimiya placed a steak in front of David with a smile on her face before turning to attend to the next customer. The dish is arranged in an even more intricate manner than the dish last night, and there's no mistaking it, this aroma is even richer than it was during the banquet. This disparity has most likely arisen from the red wine used. David's eyes lit up as he looked at the steak in front of him, but a surprised look quickly appeared in his eyes. But the red wine used in the steak yesterday had been provided by young Mistress Shear. That's the best wine that the Buffet family winery has to offer. Could there be even better wine in this world? With confusion and anticipation in his heart, David took his first bite of steak. This flavor! David's eyes immediately widened. David had traveled to many places and tasted a vast array of delicious cuisine in his life. Rodo was known as the delicious cuisine capital of the Norland continent, and he once spent 3 years there, dining at almost all of the renowned restaurants within the city. However, in his memory, there was no dish that could compare to the steak that he was tasting now. The rich wine and the juicy steak combined together in an extraordinarily harmonious manner, creating an incredibly delicious flavor. Furthermore, the sauce was igniting his taste buds as if it were a magic potion. David loved wine. Every year, he would purchase a batch of wine from the Buffett winery. The wine he purchased was inferior to the wine from Shear's personal collection, but it was still the best wine that could be sourced in the entire Norland continent. However, the wine that he regarded as treasure and drank only in limited amounts couldn't even hold a candle to the wine used to cook this beef. Just the rich and mellow aroma alone was something that his prized wine collection was completely unable to compare to, and his inner alcoholic had been completely captivated. When the steak had first been carried out of the kitchen, he had felt that it was a great pity for Mag to use such exceptional wine to marinate beef. However, such thoughts had since been completely banished from his mind. Beef of this caliber is the only thing that is worthy of such outstanding wine. Without such delicious wine, this dish simply wouldn't be complete. Even the best restaurants in Rodo wouldn't use wine of such an extraordinary caliber to cook their dishes, and even if they were provided with this wine, there was no way they would be able to use it to cook such delicious steak. Who would have thought that such delicious food would exist in Chaos City? It really was the right decision to come here today. The more David chewed on the steak, the more delicious it became. After swallowing his first mouthful of beef, his taste buds burst into an elated frenzy, prompting him to immediately place another piece of beef in his mouth to fill in for the absence of the preceding morsel of beef. Next time I want to have a delicious meal, I won't have to spend the better part of a month traveling to Rodu. There's an exceptional restaurant right on my doorstep. David finished his steak with a blissful expression before turning his attention to the other dishes on the menu. That beef was simply far too delicious. Please get me another portion. Indeed, 1,000 copper coins for such a delicious dish is an absolute bargain. The fresh iron-hide bull beef, the black pepper that's worth more than its weight in gold, and the exceptional wine, all of it culminates in creating the most delicious steak imaginable. The wine used here tastes even better than the wine from the Buffett winery, which is sold for 10,000 copper coins per small bottle. As expected, boss Mag never disappoints. All of the customers who had tasted the black pepper steak were full of nothing but praise. Mag wore a wide smile on his face as he continued to prepare food in the kitchen. The joy of having customers praise his cooking was unmatched. All of the customers were more than willing to pay for their dishes, and they felt as if they were paying bargain prices. Of course, Mag was also of the same opinion. If such exceptional ingredients were being used to cook such delicious steaks elsewhere, a price tag in excess of 5,000 copper coins would be more than justifiable. Following the conclusion of the breakfast service, Sally, Yabimiya, and Babla cleaned up the restaurant. Mag told them that he had to meet an important guest in the restaurant, so the three of them went out for some shopping, leaving only him behind in the restaurant. A lavish horse-drawn carriage soon stopped in front of the restaurant, and Sheer disembarked, looking over at Mamie restaurant with a slightly grim expression. However, a confident, elegant smile soon appeared on her face as she strode over and knocked on the door. A short while later, Mag opened the door for Sheer with a smile on his face, and said, "You're very punctual, young Mistress Sheer. Punctuality is a habit of mine. Aren't you going to invite me in to have a seat? I haven't had breakfast yet." Sheer also smiled as she looked at Mag. "Please come in, young Mistress Sheer. Our restaurant is outside of business hours at the moment, though." Mag stepped off to the side to allow Sheer passage into the restaurant. "If Mr. Mag can serve me a steak as a friend rather than customer, I'm sure collaboration would kick off with a good start," Sheer said with a smile. "All right, seeing as young Mistress Sheer skipped breakfast to honor our meeting, then I'll make an exception to cook a steak for you." "You'll be my last customer of the morning," Mag replied with a nod. "You really are a great businessman, Mr. Mag." Sheer glanced at Mag with a meaningful look on her face before entering the restaurant. "I still can't compare to you, young Mistress Sheer." Mag closed the door behind him, and said, "Please take a seat anywhere you like, young Mistress Sheer, I'll pour you a glass of water and prepare your steak." "All right." Sheer nodded as she surveyed the restaurant around her. This was her first time here in Mamie restaurant. During Mag's cooking contest with Ricky, she had filled in as a judge, but she didn't get to enter the restaurant on that occasion. The decor within the restaurant was very pleasant. It wasn't extremely lavish and extravagant, yet the crystal chandeliers in the restaurant lent it a heightened level of sophistication. This artwork, Sheer's gaze fell on the artwork on the walls, and her pretty brow creased as she looked around the restaurant. Her furrow disappeared as she turned to Mag, who had emerged from the kitchen with a glass of water, and she smiled as she asked, "Mr. Mag, your ambitions aren't limited to this small restaurant, are they?" "Indeed, I also opened an ice cream shop recently," Mag replied with a nod. Sheer faltered slightly upon hearing this before smiling as she said, "You really are an interesting person, Mr. Mag." "As are you, young Mistress Sheer." Mag placed the glass of water before entering the kitchen again to prepare Sheer's steak. The steam engine was a big deal. Even though Sheer was only 18 years old, she was already a seasoned veteran of the business world, but thankfully, Mag was also well versed in business dealings himself. "Looks like this is going to be an interesting meeting." Sheer sat down at the table that the glass of water had been placed on, and turned her attention to the kitchen. It had been a very long time since she had last felt nervous about anything. She gently wiped her white handkerchief over the surface of the table, and visibly became even more intrigued upon seeing the handkerchief remain completely pristine and spotless. "Here's your medium-well black pepper steak, please enjoy." A short while later, Mag emerged from the kitchen with a plate of steak in his hands, which he gently placed in front of Sheer. The aroma of this wine is very interesting." Sheer's eyes immediately lit up as she caught a whiff of the dish's aroma. Mag stood off to the side with his hands clasped behind his back, and looked on in silence. "The dish is arranged even more intricately than it was last night. You really are very serious about your cooking, Mr. Mag," Sheer said with a smile. She picked up her knife and fork before gently slicing into her steak. Red wine and juices from the meat spilled onto the plate under her knife, and the aroma of red wine became even more pronounced, reaching the extent that it felt as if the cork stopper had just been removed from a barrel of wine, and the aroma was wafting forth from within with reckless abandon. Shear's eyes lit up even further as she placed the piece of beef on her fork in her mouth. "This wine! How did you do it? It's even better than the most delicious wine from our winery." Shear had already been expecting the delectable flavor of the steak, but she was extremely confident in the wine brewed by her family's winery. There was no better in the entire Norland continent, let alone Chaos City. The wine that Mag had used to cook his steak during the cooking contest the night before was the cream of the crop even among the wine produced by the Buffet family winery, and the steak cooked with that wine as marinade was incredibly delicious. She had thought that Mag would have to settle for some lower quality wine to cook his steak today, thereby compromising its flavor. However, to her surprise, the flavor of the wine as she bit through the steak was even richer and more exceptional than it had been the night before. The supple texture and alluring fragrance of the wine instantly had her completely entranced. She wasn't an avid alcoholic, but she was particularly partial to the wine brewed by her family's winery, and it had become a daily ritual for her to have half a glass of that wine every night before bed. Hence, she was very familiar with what a premium quality wine should taste like. As such, she had to admit that the wine used in this steak was even better than the premium red wine that she drank every night. The texture was smooth and rich, without as much as a single hint of bitterness. Even though the steak obscured most of the wine's flavor and texture, she could still tell that this was an amazing wine, and that it had made the steak so much more succulent and delicious than it otherwise would have been. After swallowing her first mouthful of steak, Shear immediately turned to Mag, and asked, "Mr. Mag, where did you purchase this wine?" She knew that if a batch of red wine of this quality were to appear in the market, business for the Buffett family winery would take a massive hit. "If I were to tell you that I brewed this wine myself, would you believe me?" Mag asked with a smile. "If someone else were telling me this, I might not believe them, but if it's you, Mr. Mag, then I think it's very much plausible. After all, you're such an exceptional chef already, yet you still have the spare time to construct a steam engine. For a genius like you, brewing a bit of wine on the side shouldn't be a difficult task." Shear looked at Mag with a smile, and asked, "Mr. Mag, would I be able to taste a glass of this wine on its own? The wine is indeed great for marinating beef, but it's still rather too early in the morning for alcohol." Mag shook his head with a smile as he replied, "Also, this wine was brewed solely for my steak, so I'm not selling it on its own. In terms of quality, it's naturally still inferior to the wine from the Buffett family winery. I can tell what the quality is like for myself, Mr. Mag. You really are scrupulous when it comes to separating your private life from your professional career, you reject anyone without any hesitation." There was a hint of indignation in Shear's eyes as she looked at Mag. She had never been rejected by any man on so many occasions before. "Only by sticking strictly to a set of rules will my restaurant be able to thrive, isn't that right?" Mag replied with a smile. However, he was also cursing the system internally. He also wanted to sell this wine, but the system prohibited him from doing so. Otherwise, he would become rich just from selling wine. The system existed to provide its host with incredible resources, but also to set up some hurdles on his way at times. Otherwise, life would become too easy for him. What a pity! If you ever changed your mind, I'd be willing to purchase a bottle of wine from you at the same price as the market price for the most premium wine from the Buffett winery." Shear heaved a forlorn sigh, but at the same time, she was feeling quite relieved. The Buffett winery was the Buffett family's largest source of revenue aside from their banks. There were winery branches set up all over the entire continent, and they had no competition in the field of high-grade wine. As such, it came as quite a relief to her that Mag wasn't going to sell his wine on the market. "If I brew enough wine in the future, I'll be sure to keep a bottle for you, young Mistress Shear." Mag nodded with a smile. The most premium wine that the Buffett winery had to offer started at a minimum of 100,000 copper coins per bottle, so she was offering him quite a lofty price. Sheer picked up her knife and fork again, and continued to dine on her steak. Soon, she discovered that not only was the wine a more exceptional brew than what had been used the night before, even the ironhide bull beef used in this steak was of better texture and flavor, as if the beef had been sliced directly off the body of a freshly slaughtered ironhide bull. The delicious flavor dancing on the tip of her tongue completely woke up her lethargic body, and every single cell in her body was completely satisfied. She felt that tasting such a delicious meal in the morning would set the tone for a fantastic day to come. Sheer looked down at the empty plate in front of her before looking it up Mag with a smile as she said, "This is so delicious that I want another portion." Mag looked back at Sheer, and began, "If you'd like another portion I'll come back for another portion next time. It's not good to be gluttonous, particularly when it comes to such a delicious steak." Sheer shook her head as she dabbed at her lips with her napkin. When she looked up at Mag again, the smile on her face had already faded as she said, "Mr. Mag, I think it's time we talked about the steam engine now. Please come with me, young Mistress Sheer, I'd like to show you something." Mag untied his apron and put it aside before making his way toward the restaurant's entrance. Sheer was slightly surprised to see this, but she still rose to her feet and followed Mag out of the restaurant before entering the neighboring room. "What's this?" Sheer exclaimed as soon as she entered the room. Within the large room that was around 100 square meters in area, there was a small set of tracks laid down using long metal bars. In the corner of the room, there was a particularly eye-catching long metal tube-like contraption with small wheels on the bottom. Its rough lines, black metal exterior, and the chimney protruding from the roof of the first section of the contraption made it appear as if it were a dormant ferocious beast. In the second section of the contraption, there were 2 seats that were a little small, but would still be enough to seat 2 adults. "This is a train. It's the first completed creation of mine that can put a steam engine to practical use. If these trains can be constructed on a large scale, it can perhaps revolutionize transportation in this world," Mag introduced with a smile. The train and the railway tracks had been constructed by Mabai in the past couple of days. Following the assembly, it looked more like a children's toy than a revolutionary piece of technology, but it would suffice for demonstration purposes. In the past, the invention of the steam engine had transformed the entire world, and one of the main purposes that the steam engines served was to power trains. Steam trains completely revolutionized transportation on Earth, and were used for a stretch of several centuries before superior alternatives were eventually discovered. For a woman with a business sense as sharp as Sheer's, what Mag was about to demonstrate to her was something that was completely irresistible. "A train? How can a metal construction like this transport anything without a magic beast to pull it? Would you be able to demonstrate it for me, Mr. Mag?" Sheer had a surprised look in her eyes, but she didn't lock herself into any premature conclusions. "Certainly. In fact, you can test it out for yourself. It's just that the steam engine will take some time to start running." Mag nodded with a smile before making his way over to the miniature steam train, opening the lid on the boiler, and adding coals into the boiler before setting those coals alight. Steam began to flow toward the cylinders, making the pistons spring into action, and the steam train also began to tremor gently. Mag climbed into the passenger seat before turning to Sheer with a smile as he said, "Please board the train, young Mistress Sheer. You'll be the first person to ride on a steam train. One less than 2 before diesel engine actually, but rails as such appeared much earlier." The steam train was like a magic beast that was gradually awakening, and white smoke began to funnel out from its chimney. The steam began to set the pistons in motion, and a screech rang out from the train as it prepared for its first journey. "It really is moving." Sheer's eyes immediately lit up. The white water vapor billowing out from the chimney was raising the humidity in the room slightly. After a brief hesitation, Sheer climbed into the seat behind Mag's. If the steam engine was capable of doing what Mag and Heidel proclaimed it could, then it really was capable of changing the world. If that were the case, then the invention of this so-called train would be the first step of an almighty revolution. Buffett Banks was still very much on the ascendancy, but she had already identified its limitations and maximal future potential. However, if she could bring the steam engine to the world, then a realm of infinite possibilities would open up to the Buffett family. It was one of her small goals to become the president of the Chamber of Commerce, and if she could grab a hold of this opportunity, then that goal would be something that she could easily achieve in the future. Of course, thinking that far into the future would only make her get ahead of herself. The million-dollar question at the moment was whether this train could actually move or not. "The train is very safe, but do be careful and sit tight, young Mistress Shear," Mag cautioned. As he laid his hand on the control shaft, his heart was also thumping in his chest. He wasn't some seasoned train pilot. He only knew how steam trains worked, yet had never piloted one. The method of operating this train with a control shaft was very simple, but he felt as if he wasn't holding just a control shaft in his hand, he felt as if he were holding a magic wand that contained infinite possibilities. There was no way to predict what kind of effect a steam train would have on this magical world, and this lack of predictability was making him quite nervous. "Seeing as I don't have any choice, let me be the one to change this world." Mag took a deep breath before pushing the control shaft forward. The gears interlocked with each other and the small train tremored violently before the pistons set it in motion. As the wheels began to turn over the railway tracks, the train began to pick up speed and clunk its way forward. Shear's eyes widened with shock and incredulity. There were no magic beasts pulling the vehicle or pushing it from behind, yet this small train really was able to transport the two of them using just the power generated from burning coal. Shear had heard many reports from Heidel's team in the past few years, so she had a basic understanding of the steam engine, yet she was still flabbergasted by the scenes that were unfolding before her eyes. It was incredible that this light and wispy water vapor could be capable of producing such a vast amount of energy that could be harnessed and controlled. Shear's heart was also thumping wildly in her chest as she considered the possibilities all of this entailed. She was unable to comprehend how this steam train worked, but she knew that this form of energy was consistent and reliable. Perhaps all tasks that required monotonous and repetitive manual labor could be undertaken by these steam engines in the future, and the entire world would be transformed as a result. Shear was struggling to imagine how immensely vast of a market that would be. She knew that she had to be the first one to grab a hold of this technology. This steam engine was going to give rise to the biggest revolution in the next few decades, and perhaps even the next few centuries. Coal was something that was completely inexpensive, and there was almost an endless amount that could be mined from the wilderness of Chaos City. The train wasn't moving very quickly, and the wet and warm steam pouring from the chimney soon filled the entire room due to the limited space, resulting in a rather uncomfortable experience. However, this demonstration was already more than sufficient to show her the potential of the steam engine. After traveling a lap around the room, Mag pulled the control shaft back to separate the gears, upon which the small train slowly came to a grinding halt. The entire room had been enshrouded in water vapor, making it very warm and humid, but also giving the surroundings a rather ethereal quality. Mag disembarked from the train before opening the door for Shear and helping her down as well. Their hair and clothes were all wet from the warm steam in the air, yet both of them were too excited to pay that any heed. "Mr. Mag, this is truly an innovative invention. Your name will be recorded in history as one of the most brilliant inventors the Norland continent has ever seen." Shear looked at Mag with undisguised praise and amazement in her eyes. "I'm actually just a chef," Mag replied modestly. "As a chef of your caliber, it's absolutely incredible that you can invent such a masterpiece of mechanical engineering. You are truly a phenomenal genius." Mag had given her far too many surprises, and this steam train was perhaps the biggest surprise yet. Mag didn't allow himself to get carried away by Shear's praise. Instead, he kept a level head as he said, "It's indeed very pleasing to receive such glowing praise from young Mistress Shear, but I was wondering if you were interested in my steam engine and steam train. In other words, would you be interested in a collaboration with me? Powering vehicles through burning coal alone is indeed an incredible thing. However, it's yet to be seen whether this can be implemented on a large scale, and that's going to require extensive amounts of time and experimentation, which incurs a substantial risk in itself. Shear looked at Meg and contemplated momentarily before continuing. Buffett Banks can offer 10 million copper coins to purchase all of your technology surrounding steam engines and steam trains, and we're willing to assume all risks involved. Even though Shear had identified the steam engine as the next big thing, she still wasn't 100% confident in its viability. After all, this was something that was completely new and revolutionary, and a massive risk was incurred by investing in it. Success would result in immeasurable profits, but failure could also lead to severe losses. As a businessman, risk management was absolutely mandatory. 10,000,000 copper coins is indeed a very large sum, and it shows that you've acknowledged the massive impact that this technology will have on the world. Mag looked at Shear and shook his head as he said, however, this is not the sort of collaboration I'm looking for. I want to collaborate with you as the Buffett family has enormous financial ability and a vast network. I'm more interested in the future of this technology rather than to profit from it in a one-off transaction akin to killing the hen that lays golden eggs. Shear's expression became quite serious upon hearing this, and after a momentarily pause, she asked, "What kind of collaboration do you have in mind?" "My vision is to enter a three-way collaborative relationship with Buffett Banks and the City Lord's Castle. I'll provide the technology, Buffett Banks will provide the required funds, while the City Lord's Castle will provide the resources and protection. Together, we'll bring the steam engine and steam train technology to the rest of the world." Mag laid a hand on the slightly scorching metal exterior of the train. He turned his gaze toward the metal railway tracks with a hint of anticipation in his eyes as he said, "If we want to set up a railway network that spans the entirety of the Norland continent to revolutionize transportation in the entire world, then funds and technology alone will be far from enough." Shear looked at Meg and her eyes gradually lit up. At the same time, a peculiar emotion appeared in her eyes. Mag was an exceptional chef who had also displayed outstanding talent in the area of mechanics, yet at his very core, he was a businessman, one with a great eye for the future and the bigger picture. Shear very rarely developed admiration for anyone, but she suddenly found herself in slight awe and admiration of Mag. "Are you sure that the City Lord's Castle will collaborate with us?" Shear asked. Mag smiled as he answered her question with one of his own. "Do you think the City Lord's Castle won't be willing to collaborate with us?" Shear was silent for a moment as she looked at Mag. The white water vapor in the air still hadn't completely dissipated, and the man standing before her was enshrouded in this water vapor, making her unable to see him clearly both in a physical and a metaphoric sense. Mag was also looking at Shear in silence, awaiting her reply. "Your proposal is something that's very surprising to me, but I do have a great interest in your steam engine and steam train. As such, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to a three-way collaboration with the City Lord's Castle." Shear looked at Mag with a serious expression, and said, "However, I have a condition. Buffett Banks must be given priority in the usage rights of the steam engine and steam train technology. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that I'll be able to obtain enough support from the bank. I suggest you bring up this condition and any other conditions you might have during a three-way conference. In any case, I'm fairly sure that the City Lord's Castle wouldn't fight over the usage rights of this technology with Buffett Banks." Mag nodded in response, but didn't agree right away. "All right, then I'll leave it to you to negotiate with the City Lord's Castle. I look forward to the day when our three-way conference will be held." Shear nodded as she swept back her wet hair. A seductive smile suddenly appeared on her face as she said, "Why did you set up the steam train in such a closed-off place? You made me all wet. Please forgive me, young Mistress Shear, I had to do this in order to ensure the confidentiality of the steam engine and the steam train." Mag gave an awkward smile in response. If Shear's words had been heard by anyone else, they would think that he had done something unthinkable to her. "Let's go, then." Mag waved a hand and led the way toward the door. The humidity in the room was still very high, and his clothes were completely drenched, half from sweat and half from water vapor. Mag opened the door and emerged from the room together with Sheer. "Boss!" Sally's surprised voice suddenly sounded at this moment. Mag turned around, only to discover Sally and Bablat, who just so happened to be passing by this room. They were both looking at Mag with peculiar expressions on their faces. Mag and Sheer were both completely drenched, and as a result, their clothes were clinging tightly to their skin. Their hair was also rather disheveled, and they had just emerged from a room with no windows, making it difficult for others not to suspect some foul play between them. Could it be that there's some sort of unspeakable secret between Boss and young Mistress Sheer? The same thought occurred to Sally and Babla at the same time. "Humph, men!" Babla glared at Mag with a disdainful expression. He was Amy's father, yet not only was he refusing to mention anything about Amy's mother, he was even having extramarital affairs. What a despicable man! Sheer took a glance at Sally and Babla before she smiled, and said, "That was quite an enjoyable and memorable private meeting, Mr. Mag. I hope to see you again next time." "All right, see you next time." Mag nodded in response, but his expression had darkened slightly. Sheer was always speaking in such a suggestive manner. They had clearly just had a business meeting, yet she insisted on using words like private meeting to lure others into a more salacious train of thought. After Sheer got onto her lavish horse-drawn carriage, Mag turned to Sally and Babla with a smile as he said, "Why are you two back so soon? Didn't you want to stay at Mia's ice cream shop for a while longer?" Babla pursed her lips with a disdainful look on her face, and said, "If we didn't come back so early, we wouldn't know that someone's meeting a woman in secret here, and going on private dates behind closed doors. Looks like I have to deliver a report on whom I'm meeting in advance. Otherwise, our little princess is going to get angry," Mag said with a smile. For some reason, he was detecting a hint of jealousy from Bablat. After locking the door to the steam train room behind him, Mag made his way toward the restaurant. I don't want to know whom you're meeting." Babla crossed her arms and harumphed in a haughty manner. "Mia asked us to come back to bring some ice cream ingredients over to her. Business has been really good this morning, and she's worried that she'll run out of ingredients later in the day," Sally explained. "I see. I have to go out to run an errand later anyway, so I'll bring some ingredients over to her on the way. At the rate that she makes ice cream, we should have close to enough ingredients even if there's a full house for the entire day." Mag nodded before entering the restaurant. "All right, then we'll get back and help Mia out." Sally nodded as she turned to leave again. "Big sister Sally, shouldn't we go in to have a look? Maybe he's seeing other women in there." Babla turned to Sally with a hesitant look. "Boss must be showering and changing clothes right now, do you want to watch?" Sally turned to Babla with a hint of an amused smile on her face. "How could he do such things in broad daylight? I have no interest in watching that." Babla blushed as she shook her head firmly before departing with Sally. On the horse-drawn carriage, Sheer had already changed into a fresh set of clothes, and her elegant brows were furrowed tightly as she murmured to herself, "I have to discuss this matter with Grandpa. Perhaps his judgment will be superior to mine here. This is a good beginning. Now, I just have to tell a story to the city lord's castle." After taking a shower and changing into a set of clean clothes, Mag instantly felt reinvigorated. Even though Sheer hadn't made any promises to him earlier, he could clearly see that Sheer was aware of just how valuable the steam engine and the steam train were. As such, there was no way that she would be willing to give up on this opportunity. As long as the city lord's castle was willing to participate in this endeavor, Mag would be able to successfully tie Buffett and the city lord's castle to himself. As long as he held the core technology of the steam engine in his hands, even if the events from 3 years ago were to repeat themselves, those two colossal factions would be forced to stand with him. This was going to be the beginning of his journey in taking revenge on all those who had attempted, and were still trying, to kill him. This was the true reason why Mag had insisted on developing the steam engine despite the system's objections. After grabbing some ice cream ingredients from the kitchen downstairs, Mag made a trip to the ice cream shop on his bicycle first. There was a long line outside the ice cream shop, and it was a full house inside as well. The line wasn't quite as long as the staggering queues that gathered outside Mamie restaurant during peak hours, but there were still over 10 people lined up at a time like this, with more people joining the line, so it could be seen that business was going quite well for the ice cream shop. Mag carried the ingredients into the shop, and responded to all of the greetings the regular customers of the restaurant extended toward him. He handed the ingredients over to Mia before exiting the shop and heading to the city lord's castle on his bicycle. "Boss Mag, what brings you here today?" When Mag had just reached the city lord's castle, Dykus just so happened to disembark from a horse-drawn carriage. He was just about to make his way into the city lord's castle when he caught sight of Mag, and a thought seemed to have occurred to him as he smiled, and said, "By the way, I heard you won another storefront from head chef Beat yesterday. You must be here to process the handover, right?" Mag shook his head with a smile, and replied, "No, I'm actually here to see you today, Mr. Dykus. I want to discuss some matters regarding the steam engine with you." When Mag came out from the city lord's castle, it was already close to noon. He had already plastered a hiatus slip onto the door of the restaurant, so he changed his clothes and traveled to several detective agencies. There, he provided some information and also purchased some information as well. "After what happened at the banquet last night, I've attracted a lot of attention. However, I can't disclose the name, Noya Gould, yet. Still, there should be some people who will make the connection and spread the rumor. When that time comes, all I have to do is wait for the people from the Barclay family to come and find me." Mag ripped the piece of paper in his hands to shreds and tossed it into the gutter. He then entered an alleyway and changed back into his original clothes, and then ate a bland meal of noodles at a random restaurant before preparing to return home. Right at this moment, the system's voice suddenly sounded. "Ding! New mission, please head to the food market and purchase 3 required ingredients. Condition, all purchased ingredients must be of the highest quality in the entire market. Reward for mission success, 0.5 of a strength point, punishment for mission failure, 0.5 of a strength point will be deducted." "Hey!" Mag's feet faltered, and a perplexed look appeared on his face as he asked internally, "System, aren't you responsible for supplying all of my ingredients? Why are you suddenly asking me to buy ingredients elsewhere? That seems to be very out of character for you. Also, even the best produce in the markets is far inferior to the quality of the ingredients you provide. If we suddenly switch to lower quality ingredients in our dishes, the customers are going to be able to immediately notice a difference. Only the best ingredients can produce the best dishes, so the ability to pick out the best ingredients is a prerequisite for a brilliant chef. You're very lacking in this area, so this is a supplementary mission that must be completed prior to your trip to Rodu. You must master the ability to pick out the best ingredients on your own. During your time in Rodu, the system won't be providing any ingredients other than condiments to you," the system replied in a serious voice. "I see." Mag's expression also became quite serious upon hearing this. He could already understand the system's intentions. In the past, he had always relied on the system to provide the best ingredients for him. Due to the closed-off nature of his restaurant, even if someone were to raise suspicions regarding the avenues through which he procured his ingredients, he could always fabricate an excuse to placate him. However, if he were to travel to Rodu and cook the king's birthday feast, he definitely wouldn't be allowed to bring his own ingredients into the palace. Instead, he would be forced to use ingredients provided by others. As such, the ability to pick the best ingredients would obviously become very important. A 0.5 strength point reward? That's quite generous of the system. Don't mind if I do. Mag chuckled to himself as he rode on his bicycle toward the food market. After spending a silver coin to convince an old man stationed at the entrance of the food market to look after his bicycle, Mag walked straight into the market. The food market in the Aden Square was the largest of its kind in the entirety of Chaos City. Virtually any ingredient that could be found in Chaos City could also be found in this market. A tall and broad orc stood beside a massive skinned python as he yelled, "Have a look, everyone, this is a freshly slain third-tier magic beast, a black rock python. Beneath its rock-hard skin is supple and delicious python flesh. If you miss out on this one, it'll be a blue moon before you encounter another one." The python was as thick as a water tank, and it was over 10 meters long. The entire thing was dripping with blood as it hung from a rack, creating a rather gruesome sight to behold. Live pine tree mice up for sale. Perfect for keeping as a pet or roasted for a meal. There are only 3 left now, so make sure to get them quick. An elf was holding in his hand a cage, within which were enclosed 3 squirrel-like creatures. The rodents were whizzing about in the cage in a very adorable manner, drawing the attention of a few kids nearby. A dark-skinned middle-aged man was holding a banner above his head with buckets filled with freshwater lobsters in front of him while he sobbed, and yelled, "Our boss ran away with his wife, so no one's paying our wages, and we can only sell this first-tier magic beast, the skin lobster. The price is 300 copper coins per kilogram, and we're selling only while stock lasts." Mag looked at the skin lobsters that were comparable in size to Australian lobsters, and discovered that they did indeed have a lot of skin on them. However, the story that the middle-aged man was telling seemed to be a little familiar. "Look out!" The fire chicken escaped from its cage. Right at this moment, a panicked voice erupted as a fire chicken that was taller than a grown man rushed out from a shop with flames burning all over its body. A brawny half-naked man came rushing out behind it while wielding a meat cleaver, alerting everyone to the situation with his loud voice. The passers-by all rushed away in panic, and the market instantly descended into complete turmoil. The fire chicken was a magic beast, and could severely injure the average person even just by grazing them. Mag just so happened to be on the path directly in front of the oncoming fire chicken, and his brows furrowed as he looked at the slow elderly couple behind him. The fire chicken was the main ingredient in his braised chicken, and the first time he had hunted for them, a fire chicken had almost killed him. As such, he knew how dangerous these things were, particularly in a congested market with so many people around. The management staff in the market was already rushing in this direction, and some of the more powerful passers-by were also preparing to step in, but their intervention would most likely be too late for the old couple behind Mag. A scorching aura was already sweeping toward Mag, and as the fire chicken opened its mouth, a lava-like red glow could be seen shimmering within. "Let me borrow this for a second." Mag grabbed a knife from the rack of a nearby vegetable salesman before stepping forward. The knife flashed through the air, and Mag already appeared on the other side of the fire chicken. A chicken head went flying high into the air before tumbling to the ground. The oncoming fire chicken only charged forward for 2 more steps before falling to the ground, and the flames on its body also quickly fizzled out. Phew! The brawny man heaved a long sigh of relief as he came rushing over while holding his cleaver. If the chicken he was selling were to kill or injure someone in this market, he would be in deep trouble. "Bro, you're really good at killing chickens." The brawny man gratefully gave Mag a thumbs up. "Practice makes perfect, I guess." Mag cupped his fist in a salute before returning the knife to the vegetable salesman, who was still completely flabbergasted by what he saw. Mag smiled, and said, "Your knife is very sharp, thanks for lending it to me." "You're very welcome." The vegetable salesman hurriedly shook his head in response. A smattering of applause instantly erupted as everyone looked at Mag with approval in their eyes. Many people had come forward to inquire about the price of that knife. Mag smiled and nodded to acknowledge the applause before continuing to wander through the market. Mag had been here on several previous occasions, and had been overawed by the variety of magic beast ingredients in this place during all of those instances. If these creatures were living on Earth, all of them would be highly protected species, but here in this market, they were merely ingredients that could be sold without any repercussions. Lake Mwasa was the largest freshwater lake near Chaos City, and there were many types of fish that could be found within the lake. Strangely enough, there were no magic beasts that frequented this place, so it was extremely safe even to ordinary people. The Buffet owned a manor to the west of Chaos City, directly neighboring Lake Mwasa. There were a few intricate little buildings beside the lake, and the area was surrounded by a bamboo fence. There was a large tree beside the lake, which was growing in a slightly crooked manner. The tree was also twisted in the middle, and was growing toward the lake, creating a natural canopy that obscured the bright autumn sunlight. At this moment, there was an elderly man with a head of white hair sitting on a small stool underneath the tree. He was holding a fishing rod in his hand while staring intently at a white buoy floating on the surface of the lake. Sheer stood beside the old man, and asked, "Grandpa, do you think this is something worth taking the risk to invest in?" "Shh, you'll scare the fish away," the old man whispered as he tightened his grip on his fishing rod. The white buoy tremored slightly before suddenly sinking into the water as if it had been dragged under the surface by something. At the same time, the fishing line also immediately stretched taut. "There's a fish on the hook." A mixture of elation and anxiety appeared on Sheer's face as she urged, "Grandpa, hurry and reel it in. There's no need to rush. This is a big fish, and the bigger the fish, the more patient you need to be. Otherwise, both the line and rod could easily snap. In that case, you'd lose the fish and a fishing rod. That would not be a pleasant experience," the elderly man said with a smile as he began to slowly reel the fish in. "I need to be patient." Sheer faltered slightly as she looked at the large fish rising to the surface before sinking into the lake in a repetitive cycle. All of a sudden, she became rather unsure of whether she was the fisherman or the fish in this deal. She didn't know if she was the one in control, or if Mag was actually the one in the driver's seat. The hooked fish struggled for over 10 minutes in the lake before it was slowly dragged to the shore. The elderly man scooped it up with his net, and found that it was a red carp that was over 5 kilograms in weight. "We're going to have a good meal for lunch today. This is the first red carp of its size this year." Ian looked at the large carp in his net with a smile before he turned to Sheer, and said, "Little Sheer, you should join me for lunch today. Your luck has always been quite good. If Grandpa says this is a good fish, then it must be a good fish." A smile also appeared on Sheer's face as she followed Ian toward his house. In business, it's important to realize that some money should be left for other people to earn. Otherwise, your own business will eventually fail. However, the most important factor is who you're doing it with. If the person doesn't have a good set of moral standards, then you can't collaborate with them even if there's profit to be gained, Ian said with a smile as he walked. Sheer nodded with a thoughtful expression. "The newly brewed wine in our winery should be ready to come out of the cellar soon, right?" Ian suddenly asked. "It'll be ready in a few days, I'll get someone to bring you some when it's ready." Sheer turned to Ian with a perplexed look as she asked, "But there's wine with more age in the cellar, why wouldn't you drink some of that, Grandpa?" "I prefer the taste of new wine. In contrast, I don't really like aged wine," Ian replied as he shook his head. "Speaking of wine, the wine that Mr. Mag used in his steak is of even better quality than the wine from our winery. It's just that he refuses to sell it and uses it exclusively for his steaks." Sheer knew that Ian was an avid wine enthusiast. In order to drink the wine of his desires, he had expended several decades, as well as countless wealth and effort, to create the best winery on the entire continent. This was something that only he was capable of doing. "Really?" Ian's footsteps immediately faltered. He had displayed no interest in the phenomenal steam engine, yet he was now acting like an excited child. Sheer nodded, and confirmed, "The wine that he brewed for his steak has a better flavor and texture than even the most premium wine brewed in our winery." "That's very interesting." Ian nodded with a smile before continuing onward. In the City Lord's office, Dykus was looking at City Lord Michael with an excited expression on his face as he said, "City Lord, if Mr. Mag really has developed the steam engine and devised practical uses for it, this could change many things and take infrastructure development in our Chaos City to the next level. Michael sat behind his desk, his brows furrowed in deep thought. After a prolonged silence, he shook his head, and said, "Don't jump to any conclusions before we see the actual product. If the Buffett family is willing to participate in the collaboration, then they'll be assuming most of the risk. Should we go to Mamie restaurant right now, then?" Dykus was barely able to contain his excitement. He had been closely following the progress of Heidel's research team in the past few years, and was well aware just how much the steam engine could change the world. "There's no hurry, I have a couple of upcoming meetings to attend, so we'll go later tonight." Michael shook his head as he rose to his feet and made his way over to the door. As he passed by Dykus, he stopped and smiled as he said, "I know you're very excited, but don't tell anyone about this for now, not even Heidel and his team." Dykus faltered slightly upon hearing this before quickly nodding in response. "Yes." Mag made a lap around the food market and had made a rough assessment of which ingredients could be found in which location, as well as what the level of quality was like. "It's a real shame that these ingredients are going to waste. With the mediocre culinary standards of this world, there most likely aren't many people who can truly do these ingredients justice," Mag thought to himself wistfully. The diversity of ingredients in this market was making his eyes water. At the same time, he was very much looking forward to creating his own recipes after becoming a chef who was truly proficient in his craft. "Is that a human-sized lobster? I wonder if it'll taste good as a spicy dish," Mag speculated internally. After organizing his scattered thoughts, he had already decided on the ingredients that he was going to purchase. The system had stipulated 3 dishes, and taking into consideration the fact that he would be able to source his own ingredients once he reached Rodu, he decided on the spicy grilled fish, braised chicken and rice, and black pepper steak. The iridescent scale grass carp was a crossbred fish that the system had conjured up, so it didn't exist in this world. After looking through all of the fish being sold in the market, Mag decided on a type of fish known as the Kirin carp in the end. This type of fish had thick and heavy scales, yet its flesh was very tender and succulent, and its bones were quite large. Mag looked on as the shop owner killed the fish, and he was already devising a plan to remove some of the smaller bones from the fish. There should be no issues with using it to cook spicy grilled fish. The braised chicken required fire chicken, and when Mag set out in his quest to find the right chicken, the shop owner whom he had just saved from getting into major trouble was more than happy to help him out. He went into extensive detail about how to pick the best chicken, telling Mag about everything from the feathers to the feet, giving Mag an extremely practical insider's perspective on the subject.